relive the way the Rebbe explained Elul, and the Rebbe brought us into the whole mood, mindset of the month of Elul. And that started from Shabbos Mevorchim Elul. The Rebbe would speak about the Inyan of Elul and explain what Elul is, and we have to relive it. And when you remind ourselves, I know we sit down, you remind yourself, and you put yourself in the matzav. So besides that, it says, "Welcome shemachshavte shalodam shoman imtza," where your machshavi is there, you are. So if you put your mind to it, to the Farbrengen, this Farbrengen the Bell, this Farbrengen the Shabbos Mevorchim, this one, you put yourself in the matzav there. But Posha Kipshuta, it makes you Posha not only beruchni, but mainly you're like you're there. You Posha Taka there. Remember, that's the real pshat, machshavte shalodam, welcome shemachshavte shalodam shoman imtza, that you're Taka there. It's not. But some people think it's a psaruch. If I think about it there, I'm talking there. Well, the famous story that some say is about Shem Tov, somebody else, that after davening Shemon Esrei, davening with the minyan, Shem Tov, or whoever it was, came over to that one of the people and said, Shalom Aleichem. I mentioned the story not long ago. So he asked him, Shalom Aleichem, why Shalom Aleichem? I'm here the whole time. So he says, no. During Shemon Esrei, you were in Leipzig and you were in Petersburg and you were here, with there, and that's where you were talking. Now you're coming back, so I have to give you Shalom Aleichem. Because you are there, Takya. The famous Rebbe, Friedrich Rebbe, told a story with this person that tried to describe, he was a soldier in the army, the Russian army, and he had an appointment. They invited him to go to the Tsar, to see the Tsar, and he described how he felt before, a few days before, and finally he described as he's standing there, ready to go, and as he's telling the story, years later, he fainted. The Friedrich Rebbe says, why did he faint? Because he lived it. He just didn't tell the story. He was there. He relived the way it was when he felt that he had to go into the Tsar. So we could relive it. So this is what Elul is. So for us, you have all kinds of svarim, but we know what the Rebbe says, and that's what we have to repeat. So when we sit down with Farbrengen in the Shabbos Mevorchim Elul, the best thing is to repeat what the Rebbe says. And when we see that from that, we'll get an idea what it is. Now, one of the main things that the Rebbe would repeat a lot of times is what the Friedrich Rebbe says about how Elul was in Lubavitch. That's in the Likutei Diburim. And what's the milas of doing it through Zoom? You could have a sefer in front of you and you could be more accurate than what you repeat. So I'll just say what he says here. Used to be brother Vikitza, but there's certain point that the Rebbe really was masbir. The Friedrich Rebbe says like this, and he calls Lubavitch, the city of Lubavitch, the Ira Bira of Lubavitch. The Friedrich Rebbe calls it in the Sikha, that's in Likutei Diburim. And he says that the Shabbos Mevorchim Elul in Lubavitch, even though, and I'm repeating every word because that's one of the Nekudas the Rebbe explained pshat in every word of the Sikha, that even though it was still a clear, sunshiny day, the avir changed already, the air changed already, the atmosphere changed. You started feeling already the smell of Elul, the wind of Tshuva started blowing, every person was more calm, more serious, he says, more vertracht, more in thought, and you started forgetting about all weekday things. And he explains that 2 months in the summer, there was 2 months during Sfira time, people were serious. During the 9 days, people were serious, whatever. And he goes, but the bottom line, he goes that after Shabbos Nachmu, they started learning more. But when it came to Shabbos Mevorchim Elul, they started feeling the Elul air. And with great Spannung, how would you say in English? I don't know. Spannung means something that you're expecting. They were waiting for the L'David Hashem Yishi, the Keila Shofar. The first Tkiyah reminded everybody that the gates of the month of Rachmim opened up. And then he says, the Chassidus in Shabbos Mevorchim Elul, the Chassidus that the Rabbi would say in Shabbos Mevorchim Elul, with the general, regular Dibur HaMaschel, Anila Dei Dividei Dili, Shashateva Elul, or Hashemayim Kisi, and that was said if Shabbos, if it was the Shchedesh Elul, because the Shchedesh the Haftarah is Hashemayim Kisi, or Re'ei Anoichem Neisam Tmich Mayim. So these Maimorim already were Elul Dikeh. Every day of Elul is not the same like every day of the whole year. When you're lying in bed, 6 o'clock in the morning, you already hear how the first minyan already finished davening and they're blowing shofar. The Keila shofar wakes you up in Elul of the world. You you rush yourself to get dressed, and you have a feeling that you're not happy with yourself. Why did I sleep so late? Talking about 6 o'clock in the morning, you feel like in Rayon, in your mind, goes through the idea that Moshe Rabbeinu was on Har Sinai from the Shchedesh Elul, and these are Yemei Rotzen, And in these days, you could accomplish a lot more. Men darf sein a Mensch. You have to be a person. Men darf die Zeit nicht verschlafen. We shouldn't oversleep this time. This is basically what the Frierdiker Rebbe says, what it was in Lubavitch. Now, one could say what was in Lubavitch is in Lubavitch, but what does it got to do with us? So one of the Farbrengens, and this was Farbrengen of, I think, Shabbos Mevorchim El Tovshin Chof Ches, because this Sikh of the Rebbe, of the Frierdiker Rebbe, the Rebbe has it over many times, and he spoke about it. One Sikh even explained the different expressions, which, if we have the time, I'll go into that, repeat that, because that's basically what the Farbrengen has to be, to repeat what the Rebbe said. What the Rebbe explained Elul. So in this Farbrengen of Shabbos Mevorchim El Tovshin Chof Ches, the Rebbe quoted this whole Sikha, and the Rebbe asked the Shaila, how can we relate to that when we're different? In Lubavitch, things were different. People were more ruchnisdik. Gashmias was not so much teifas mokim. The main thing was ruchnias. So when it comes to Elul, they had the feeling. And the Rebbe said even more. Even the Goyim knew that in Lubavitch is the place where ruchnias is more. The Goyim would say, they would come there and do business there, I guess. Why did they do business? How did they do business? They did business because so many guests came to Lubavitch, so they were able to sell their things, their wares. So they knew that they said they're making money because here is a Mokim Kedusha, and a Mokim Kedusha people come, and B'meila, that gives them a panosa. So even they realized that the Iker is the Ruchni is the Kedusha. So how do we compare and how can we relate to what the Frierdiker Rebbe explains it was in Lubavitch, the city of Lubavitch, the Ira Bira of Lubavitch. So the Rebbe said, Takyazei, we're not the same, Meligan and Gashmias, but nevertheless, we could take a lesson to a certain degree. We could get kayach from the way it was in Lubavitch. We get kayach that we could also do it. I guess not exactly the same way, but a me'ain of that we could do. So it is negaya to know how it was in Lubavitch, and the Rebbe quoted this many times, practically speaking, that we should realize what Elul is, Bachsidim, because this was there, that was the way it's Bachsidim. Now, in another Farbrengen, in the Farbrengen of Shabbos Mevorchim Elul, Tovshin Chof Tes, I remember from that Farbrengen, I can't tell you that I remember the details of what the Rebbe said. That I remembered, and I looked now in the Sefer, so it's reminding me, when I see what it says there, I actually had a shaykhs also to writing the Hanochas, so now it comes back what the Rebbe said concerning Elul, more practical to us, which fits to the fact that we're not like in Lubavitch. And the Rebbe was explaining what is the problem with us. How come we don't really feel the union of Elul? So the Rebbe said like this, when it comes to Shabbos, I'm not going to not read it word for word, but I'm going to say what it said, what the Rebbe said then. And I remember what the Rebbe said then, this was more, not the Sabir and Chassidus, not the Sabir and Amayim, not a Bir and a Rasha. It was Poshet Geret, practice, down to earth, like a Mashpia would sit and Farbrengen with Balabatim, with Mevorchim, tell them, what the problem is or how Elul is. That's what the Rebbe said. And I remember it made such an impression. I remember myself from that Farbrengen, it made such a, he said it is, inspiration of the way the Rebbe put it. This was amongst many things. Farbrengen, along Farbrengen, and the Rebbe masber all kinds of inyonim and Torah, like the Rebbe always did. But this episode was a part that came into the heart because here you see das meint memir, because this is what the Rebbe said. Now say what he said. The Rebbe said that the main problem of us is the main Ike is, and I'm looking here, I'll tell you, into the Sichas Kedesh of that Tes. It also is in Teres Menachem, but there it's already in Lashon Kedesh. You don't really, see, Teres Menachem, they brought out the Sichas, they made it very clear, you should understand it, and it's made a dicker work that they're doing something unbelievable. So deswegen, it's more like a sefer, written a sefer of Torah, what the Rebbe said, when you look into the Hanochas, especially if you were there, and the Shaykhs are writing it, so to remind you push it, you get a feeling of being by the Farbrengen. So you relive what that Farbrengen the Rebbe said. So the Rebbe said like this, the main thing is that people cannot tear themselves away from their regular daily life the way they're involved. So when it comes to Shabbos Mevorchim Elul, and you have to have a Yisroel, the problem is that you can't get away from Yechayev Aragilim, and you're involved in all the things that you're involved, and you can't pull yourself away to make yourself feel better. In other words, the Frierdiker Rebbe says that what happened there, just a new time. Came Elul and Gevon, people felt differently. We can't feel differently. And the Rebbe goes in, gave us an example, an interesting example. He spoke about it a few times that year, Chof Tes, Pasha Vayigash, the Rebbe spoke about landing on the moon, because they didn't land on the moon then, that they came to circle the moon 10 miles within the moon. The Rebbe gave Hiro, it's a whole Farbrengen and Pasha Vayigash. Then summertime, there was another Farbrengen when they actually landed on the moon, and the Rebbe spoke about it. So here the Rebbe says that people can't get away from thinking about what happened with the moon. What's with the moon? About the landing at the moon. That's an important thing for you. So many weeks passed by already. You had enough time to think and get all the Yiroes that you have. So why are you kochazaching that now? It's Shabbos Mevorchim Elul, comes to Cheder Shel, Daveda Vanila Deidili. That's what you have to think about. What is negate to you that they really went to the moon? And not only that, that time there was a whole discussion whether they should make another project to go to Mars. So the Rebbe said, so it's negated to you to know whether they're going to go to Mars or not, and there's a machlekes between different goyim whether they should go to Mars or not. What is that? You have to be involved in the Elul. So the Rebbe said, but people say, but I don't feel it. He gets up in the morning and he makes sure, the first thing, make sure his tie is good. You have to make your tie should be the way it's supposed to. The way, and if it's not going to be that, you're not going according to Minik Kamdina. You have to read the paper. That's the first thing you do. He's talking about the month of Elul. Then he says, what do you have to read the paper for? So he says, if he's not going to know what it says in the newspaper, he'll say he's a battling. So the Rebbe will say, a battling is good. A battling is good. The Gemara says that a city that doesn't have Asora Batlonim is not called a city, it's called a Kfar. Other Rabbi, you're making the city into a city. So what's the problem here about battling? So he says, no, the person answers, no, he has to know what goes on with the moon. He has to go whether they're going there. And everybody repeats himself. He says, you have to know about what they sent, the rocket they sent to Mars. The Eibush sent you on a further, longer journey. Your neshama came down. It's a longer journey. The journey to Mars is really nothing. And the Rebbe says very practical. What's the big deal? To the moon. What's the big deal that it came to the moon? It's a big deal. It's flying. They fly always. It's for a little bit more. It's a chilik in kamus. It's not a chilik in eichus. Nothing new happened here. But your neshama came down. Is a far, far flight, which is in your eichus. So that's what you have to think about. And the Rebbe sent you down to do a shlichus. So you have to do the shlichus. The Rebbe sent you from Tachas Kisei HaKoved all the way down here. And what's your answer? Why don't you do your shlichus? Because you're busy. The Rebbe used the word busy. That is busy. And so the Rebbe says, to the time of Elul, it says, man, that you have to do tshuva. And the guy says, but I don't feel it. I mean, you could relate to what the Rebbe is saying. I don't feel it. And the guy says, Meile, Shabbos and Yontev. I feel a difference. Why do I feel a difference? Push it. Because I'm a frumerid. I don't go to business. I put on my Shabbat Shabbos. I go to shul. We daven. Special Shabbos. So you feel a difference. But it comes here, in the middle of the week, every day, the same thing. And it's Elul. You don't feel that Aveda of Elul. And so you tell him, but it's Aveda of Tshuva. You got it to Tshuva. He says, I know that a long time ago. There's nothing new about it. I know a long time ago that Elul is Tshuva. I learned it a long time ago. I mean, to learn it a long time ago. You have to know what's the you learned a long time ago. And Rebbe even told a story. He says, I was speaking to a certain Rav. He told me that the people that he spoke and the people were in a certain Hisayrus. So the Rebbe says, I asked him, so did you take an opportunity to speak about Taras HaMishpacha to them? He says, I spoke about it 20 years ago already. I said, what do you mean you spoke about 20 years ago? What's the gate 20 years ago? You have to do it now. So he said, no. Geblieben beim Nu. So that's what Rebbe went on and saying. You have to know the Eya Neichen Nesen, with Neichen, Hayem Brocha Kluller Eya, you have to see it. And Rebbe went on to say, and he used the example of the Levana because that was mamish something that everyone was involved in. Instead of looking at the Levana and thinking about that, you have to learn Torah, Zayim Kayamitza, bring up Mashiach, and he'll answer all your shaylas. And the problem is that people forget on the truth, he says. People forget on the emes lamite, that we are different than others and we have to do it. And the Rebbe went on and on and on. I'm not going to go through the most of the Sikha, but just to bring out that I remind myself when I started reading it, looking at it, because I wanted to remind myself. So I looked at it. So I remind myself when the Rebbe is speaking, you could stand there, and the Rebbe, this is more like, it's more speaking proteus to the people that we have to remember that, yes, it's the month of Elul, and the month of Elul is a time that we have to feel. And we have to feel the problem. This is one of the problems of they say the people who came from Russia and my father, other people just say that in America is that everything is the same. There's no, there's no episis slavis, and they say that this person is the same in Tisha B'Av and Rosh Hashanah and Kippur and Purim, and it's all, a day comes. You have to have this to say, and that's what the Rebbe pushed a lot. That this is what we have to think about when we think about Elul. Now, I do want to repeat what the Rebbe said in the Geya, that Sikh of the Frierdiker Rebbe. In that Sikh of the Frierdiker Rebbe is medayik in every word. Not the word mamish, but he's medayik in the expressions that the Frierdiker Rebbe used. Now, I imagine that this is a Mugadik Sikha from the Frierdiker Rebbe, because it's printed in the Lakut Deburim, so it's probably Mugya. But the truth is, the Rebbe, even if it wouldn't be Mugya, the Rebbe medayik sometimes in the Frierdiker Rebbe Sikhas, even if it's not Mugya. The Moshel, if I remember correctly, I'm saying if someone knows better that the Rebbe has all kinds of biurim in the Sikha, the Frierdiker Rebbe, where he told over what his father told him when he saw Pashas Kisovei, the Baal Shem Tov in a dream or in the Chazoyan, he saw in Gan Eden the Baal Shem Tov saying the Sheva Teiros. And the Sheva Teiros are written what the Frierdiker Rebbe has it over by a Farbrengen, and I think it's built in Mugya. Why do I think it's built in Mugya? Because in one of the Teiros it says Choser. I think it's not Mugya. And the Rebbe has all kinds of biurim in that. So by the Rebbe, I guess he knew the ones that wrote the Sikhas are medayik, but here the Rebbe was medayik in the words. And in this Sikha, going back to the first Sikha that I mentioned, that the Frierdiker Rebbe says there, and this is something that the Rebbe talks about in many Sikhas of the month of Elul. And he says like this: there are a few things that the Frierdiker Rebbe it's negayah to know. Number one, this was a Farbrengen that the Rebbe said, the Frierdiker Rebbe said Pesach. It's one thing. You know, by the Rabbi, he said, not only every word that they said is Uzgehalten, and you have to learn it, and the Rebbe should learn the Frierdiker Rebbe as a word, like you learn a Mishnah, like you learn a piece of Gemara. Every word is not only that, but also the time when they said it has to do with the time. So the Frierdiker Rebbe said this Pesach. That's one thing. A second thing is, he said that even though when Elul, Shabbos Mevorchim Elul came, in the Chals Geven Azun Shine Dikatog, it was still a day that the sun was shining. So you have two things. Number one, it said in Pesach, he mentioned that it was still a sunshiny day. Then he mentioned that when it came to Elul, he said the avir changed, the air changed. They felt the smell of Elul, and the wind of Tshuva blew. 5 things that the Rebbe is medayik here. And mamish words like this, if not for the Rebbe, what would someone say? The Frierdiker Rebbe had a chush atziyur. He had a chush to describe things. He was very poetic. He was, what do they say? A prolific writer and speaker. So when he described something, he used fancy words to explain it. That's what some people do. Some people who speak, and they could say the same thing in one word, and they say expressions like this, to make people excited. Could be say something full of, I wouldn't say bluff, it's fluff. It's a lot of, the Rebbe is not shaykhis. The Rebbe is medayik every word here. So when you have these 5 things, there must be a reason for these 5 things, and they have a shaykhis to the inyan that we are talking about. So the Rebbe and the Sikh, everyone could look into the Sikhs, everyone could know it. But like I said, who's going to sit down? Only thing you have to do is say over what the Rebbe said and bring it down to us. So the Rebbe is answered like this. First, he asked the Shiloh, why did he say it on Pesach? Pesach is the complete opposite of the month of Elul. Pesach, we always know, is the Aveda Milmayla Lamata. It's Deidi Livi Anilei. Niglu Alei Melech Malchei Amlochim. Teibisher was Nizgalu to the Yin. The Inyan of Elul is the opposite. Anila Deidi V'Deidi Li. It starts Mata Lamayla. The Rebbe doesn't bring all the protein, but Tishrei, Chilik and Tishrei and Nisan, Tishrei is Tov, Shin, Reish. That's backwards. Tov is the last, Shin is the one before, Reish is the one before. Shows we're going Lamata Lamayla. Chedesh Nisan is called Chedesh HaAviv. Aviv is Aleph, Beis, So Nisan is Mamayla Lamata, this is Lamata Lamayla. So Nisan basically is the Sarusa de Leila, and Tishrei, Elul is Sarusa de Latate. Why would he speak about this in the Pesach? Again, this only the Rebbe could have such a shaila. It's not for the Rebbe. What's the big deal? Sometimes you're talking about certain things in the middle. You bring in something. You can't talk and mention Pesach but obviously, if you mention that has a shaykh, so the Rebbe has the shaykh. So the Rebbe explains like this. We know that Elul, Tishrei, Elul, is Mamata Lamayla. It's Sarusa de Latate. But the Sarusa de Latate itself only is there after an Sarusa de Leila. The Kayach to have an Sarusa de Latate also comes Milmayla. The best raya is, because remember, there's a stira, we say Elul is Mamata Lamayla. The Yid comes, Anila the Yid to the Eivishter. But we have the Moshel, or the Melav Asodeh. Elul, the king, comes to the field, which the Rebbe says is the Indian, represents the Indian of his Galus Yud Gimel Midas Rachamim. If the king comes to the field, that's the Milmayla, that's the Eibishter coming. The Eibishter is coming to us. So that's a Sarusa de Leila. What did we pshat? That it's a Sarusa de Latate. And also it's his Galus of Yud Gimel Midas Rachamim. That's what it says in Spalter Rebbe writes. By the way, this is a Chassidus. The Vil doesn't know that. I once gave a shir here, and they were from the people, from the Bochum, from the Yeshivas. And I said, Tapasha, by me, after the Stankefallen, that you have to discuss it. And since it's Elul, so you give us Rachmim. So afterwards, someone comes over, what do you mean, what are you talking about? What do you mean it's Galus from the Rachmim? Where does it say that? They have no idea. It says in Kabbalah, in Chassidus, but they don't have. But we know it. It says Galus, you give them Rachmim. And you give them Rachmim is a very Ha'ich Madrege. Making a joke, maybe since they don't have beards, they don't need to give them Rachmim, so they don't know it. So I know that Rebbe, we know it's connected to Chassidus. I know somebody once went to the Yechidus, Bocher that I used to give a shir Tanya in RJJ. The one Bocher, it came in Lubavitcher, and he started growing a beard, and he went into the Rebbe two times, the Rebbe, one guy, and he has a Rebbe about growing a beard, so the Rebbe said, sure, and he said it's in Rachmim, and it's all kind. So he says, so one of the guys asked, so how come the Litvisher don't? So he says, started smiling, says, well, maybe they think they don't need to give us Rachmim. But anyway, Yud Gimel Rachmim is Galus. So how does it fit that Yud Gimel Rachmim is Galus in Elul, when Elul is Mamata Lamayla? Elamai, the word is like this. In simple words, the taich is, this is not the words that Rebbe is saying in the Sikh, I'm just make it like clearer. It doesn't say that the Melech comes to you and pulls you in. See, Pesach, he did that. Pesach, the Eibishter came and pulled him out of Mitzrayim. Here it's not. He comes and makes himself available, which if you want to put it in simple words, the Eibishter makes it easy for us to get close to him, but he doesn't pull us. So it's Sarusa de Latate. We have to on our own, but he makes it so simple. He comes to the field and he's there. If you don't want to come, he's not going to pull you, but he makes it so available that it makes it easy for you. And Bechlal, it says that, this is what Rebbe says in the Sikha, that every Sarusa de Latate really has a kayach from a Sarusa de Leila. Now, when is the real Zman of the Sarusa de Leila? The Zman of the Sarusa is Pesach. That's why he spoke this on Pesach, because he wanted to show how it comes from a Sarusa de Leila be'etzem. The Sarusa de Latate comes from the Sarusa de Leila. Then after the Sarusa de Latate brings a second Sarusa de Leila, which is even higher. So that's what the Rebbe says. So you have the Sarusa de Leila, that's Pesach. That's why he said that's noch als a Zun scheinen dicker Tag. Zun, the sun represents the Eibishter. Like it says, Shemesh Shemogen, Havaya Likim, Shemavaya. So he wanted to show that the Aveda of Elul starts with the Gilim L'mayla. So he said it on Pesach, and he said it's a day that the sun still shines. That means the Inyan of Shemesh Havaya, there is a Gilim L'mayla. That's what he said. That's why you brought this Inyan. Otherwise, what's negay to say that the sun still shines? Might have seen the sun shine. What is? I feel in push-up shot. What's negay? The sun shines. Even though the sun still shines, it was Elul. But Pasha, you could answer, the sun shines makes you in a good mood. But because it's Elul, they became more serious. Different. I don't think that's what he meant. So the Rebbe says, he meant to say that it's still their Gila, their Mamayla. And what did that bring out? So he says two things. It brought the wind of Tshuva and the smell of Elul. The union of wind. What's the union of wind? Wind is ruach. When the Geya Tshuva, the Pasuk says, "Veruach toshuv el olikim Hashem asana." The ruach will go back to the Eibishter. That's Tshuva. The real avodah of Tshuva is to bring yourself back to a matzav that you were close to the Eibishter before the neshama came down. So you bring it back. So he wanted to show what the union of Tshuva is, that it has to do with the wind. It has to do with the ruach. And we know Tshuva has to do with the union of Mashiach. Why? Because Tshuva, the length in such a high madrege, the madrege of Reach. Kabbalah and Chassidus, we learned the union of Reach is a very high madrege. That's why, what I'm saying now is not everything that the Rebbe says, I'm just adding. But it's that Reach, the smell, that's the union of Kteres. And we learn in Chassidus, even in Ayin Beis, he talks about it a lot. The chilik from Kteres bis Karbonis. Even though the Karbonis also says Reach Necheya, but the real thing of Reach is like Kteres. Kteres is a much higher madrege. Karbonis means you become close. You become close.
William.
No. Mute yourself. Could you mute yourself? Karbonis is Kiruv. Kteres is a lotion kesher. In Aramish, a kesher, a knot, not just being close. Close, you can be like this. A knot is Kteres. And that's the union of Reach. That's why it says Reach is something that Neshama and Ana. Why Motsei Shabbos we smell psomim? Because since a person feels bad as a Neshama Yisroel left, so you smell and that touches your Neshama. Because Reach represents a high madrege. Zokta the Alter Rebbe said, somebody once gave the Alter Rebbe, about Tshuva, the Alter Rebbe gave him a present, a tabak pushkele, a little box, a silver tabak pushkele for tobacco, for smelling tobacco. And the Alter Rebbe didn't want to use it for that, and he said these words: "Sido ein aver in guf was nishkim baltaive." There's one limb in the body that's not a baltaive. Every other limb is a baltaive. Your eyes is a taive. You want to see what you shouldn't. You want to talk what you shouldn't. You want to hear what you shouldn't. And do things that you shouldn't. No one has a taive to smell. You enjoy it if it's a good smell, but a taive to smell. So he said, "Sido ein aver in guf was nishkim baltaive." Will man am echon stoppen mit taive? Man stop him up with taive. And it's why is it Reach not about Taiva? Because Reach is a high that represents a high madrege. That's why it says Mashiach will come. How is he going to judge? Hashem. Meirach v'doin, the Gemara says. He's not going to judge a person by looking into the case. He'll smell him. So the union of Reach is a wonder with Mashiach, which is forbidden with Tshuva. And Tshuva reaches to the level of Reach. That's why he said the union of Reach. And he wants to show that this is something that you always have to do. And from Elul, what it does is it makes it that the whole year you will be like that. That's why he said there's a change in the avir. What's avir? Avir is air that you need to breathe. And we know it says in Chassidus, it says in Nigla, also in Rambam. The most important thing that's the most needed that you must have is air to breathe. And that's very available, but that has to need every second. It says that clothes is more important than a house. Food is more important than clothes. Drink is more important than food. And air is the most important of everything. And that's something that you have to have. And it says, Kela neshama halal ko. So the Chazal say, neshama is meloshin neshima, breathing. I'll call neshima tzirich l'halal Hashem. And every breath you have to thank Hashem. Because every second that you breathe, you must have it. And Hashem makes you have it. So the Frike Rebbe used the word at the change of the avir, that this all brought a new avir. A new avir means that this made your avir, something that's the most important part of you, that you have this in Tshuva. And this is the way he described the union of Lubavitch. And the Rebbe describes it, and like I said before, but Shaili is a Vikum Tasuns, we're not in Lubav, we're not in that Madrege, but obviously a little bit of lesson we could take, that this is the union that we have to take serious, the union of Tshuva, that we have to take it serious. The Rebbe was in Medayik, not in the Sichel, look at the Sichels, but in that same Farbrengen, which is Toshin Chav Zayin, the Rebbe was Medayik in another Nekuda of the Lekutei Deburim. He mentioned the Maimorim that the Rabbi would say in Elul, Shabbos Mevorchim Elul. So they say that the way he said the Lashon was that they would say the Maimer Anila Deidi, then Hashemayim Kisi, Anila Deidi, then Hashemayim Kisi, and then he would say, then he the Maimer of Re'ei Anochi. So the Rebbe asked, what's the Seder? Imagine, I mean, when you think about it, it's mind-boggling the way the Rebbe learns a word of the Friedrich Rebbe, which teaches us, that's by the way, how we have to learn a word of the Rebbe. We have to learn the Rebbe is medayik in every word. And I want to say, even from a practical, the Rebbe's word is meduyik, not only because of Ruchnis and Yonim. The Rebbe knows that we look at him the same way he looked at the Rebbe, the Friedrich Rebbe. And if whatever he will describe in the Friedrich Rebbe, he knows that we are going to say the same thing about him. He knows that. I'm saying from a practical point of view. So if he says that every word of the Rebbe's sich is, every expression is meduyik, obviously his every expression is meduyik. And we have to learn. Now, it doesn't mean that we can sit and learn that way. If we're going to learn a sich and medayik in every word, that's not possible. But to know that it's meduyik. Now, I have to add something else, which I think that I don't know if the Friedrich Rebbe Bishasi said that sikha, that paragraph, had in mind all the things that the Rebbe said. I doubt it. It's impossible to have every word there. But since the Rebbe said it, it is. Salderich, like the Rebbe quotes from Kresi Uplesi, who says, the Rebbe said, like of the Rambam, but he quoted, he says, like of the Beis Yosef, for medayik in every word of the Beis Yosef, the Shulchan Aruch, and not only every word, even the Seder of halachas. Why did this sif come before this sif? Medayik ganze halachas we learn now. So he says, is it possible for a human being to write something like that he should have so many things, every halacha in mind can be? He says, but since he wrote Beruach HaKodesh, it's definitely there. Definitely there. And the Rebbe used the same thing about the Rambam. And I'll tell a story what I just told over Chafov in the big, Zoom thing or whatever we call it, of the Rebbe's father. But the Rebbe's father once went into Yechidus to the Rebbe Rashab, and the Rebbe Rashab asked him, or said to him, I heard that you give a shir in Tanya. He said, yeah. And the Rebbe said, I heard that you say Viyurim and Pilpulim and Hezbeirim in Tanya. The Rebbe Rashab wrote a letter that no one should do that. Tanya is so deep that you can't get into it. You can't, do it. So he said, I heard you do it. Is it true? He said, yeah. And the same thing was in the Geya Samachvov. A different time. He asked, do you have a shir in Chassidus? He said, yeah. What are you learning? He said, Samachvov. So he asked him, where are you holding? The third page, fourth page. How long is the shir going on? A few months. So what took you so long to get from the beginning to the beginning of the Maimed is on Kasha? So he said, because I'm a daik in every word. I'm a daik in every word. Why this Kasha is before this Kasha and why expression like this. So the Rebbe Rashab says, tell me what you're saying. Give me a sample. So he started saying a few things. So the Rebbe Rashab said to him, when I wrote this is not, I didn't have this in mind. But every word you said is true. So the same thing here also. So I'm just saying that this gives us an understanding to know every word is true. Now everything that's mugya. Now, I want to go into protim how you have to be medayik, which kind of diyuki. Not every medayik. You can't be medayik. Why he uses this expression? Like if he writes, it says in the Sikha Nigla instead of Galia. Why does he pick? So the Rebbe would write the word himself. Could be also, but if he didn't write it, maybe he would have written. I don't know those. But the truth of every union that it says is truth because the Rebbe was medayik. If it's a bilti mugya, I have to tell you the truth. Bilti mugya, b'chlol is probably it's right. We hope it's right, but I can't swear that every word that it says there is right because it's written by people. Sometimes you understand more. Sometimes you understand less. You could forget. It's not so poshut. Sometimes it says on the sikha not bilti mugya, but it says rishimas hashemim, which means that even the Rebbe was magia, but the Rebbe said wants to show that this is the way you heard it. No, the Sikha and Samachvov, the famous Sikha that's printed in Samachvov, and the Rebbe's Masbid, the Mile of Samachvov. So I remember the Rebbe was Magia, the Sikha, and he added the words Shimas Hashemim. So if you look in Samachvov, the Sikha is printed, it says there Shimas Hashemim. I don't know why it came to printed in Chedek Zayin, look at the Sikhas. I don't remember why we took out those words. I remember exactly what, but it doesn't say there. But in the original one, it says Shimas Hashemim. So, but that's Mukhe, so you can be Medayik. So getting back here, this is just a side to give what I'm saying is that you have to, that every word is pushed. The Rebbe asked the Shaila here, why is the Seder of the three Mamorim that the Friedrich Rebbe used the Loshen was in the Seder that first is Hanila Deidi, then Hashemayim Kisi, and then he said the A. Now he said Hashemayim Kisi, Dikum Hashemayim Kisi, it only is if Shabbos, if Rosh Chodesh is Shabbos. Because if Rosh Chodesh is Shabbos, then the Haftarah is a Shemayim Kisi. So the Rebbe said, why does that come before the A? It's much more common, much more todir is that it's Parshas Rei. Now sometimes it's not, but usually it's Rei. It should be Rosh Chodesh. Shabbos, the beginning the Chodesh is a Yitzim Naklal. And Bechal, the Parsha Shashavu is first. So the Rebbe said this is also Meduig, because it goes into Seder. The first thing he's telling you, Anila Dei Devi, that's the first one, because that's the Aveda that we do. And then the Shai Levert, Anila Dei means, and the way the Rebbe is Masbi, you reach, what's our Aveda? Reach very high Madrege. When the Aveda of Elul is to bring to the Tamlichuni Aleichem, to reach the Madrege of making the Eibishter Melech, which comes from Bchir Chofshis of the Eibishter Tol Yonah. So you reach a very high Madrege. So a person could ask, you're telling me I need a day that I have to do that. How could I do that? So the answer is Hashemayim Kisi. A Kisi, what's a chair? A chair is where you sit down. You lower yourself. The Eibishter lowered himself to make it possible for us to do it. And then comes Re'eh, that you do it, but you can't just do it. You got to see it. You got to basically, didn't explain it, basically you got to see it. Seeing is believing. That means you got to live it. It should mean seriously. That's the whole bottom line. So the whole bottom line is that we have to take the Inyan of El seriously. And this is what the tried to Hakara. And if you look back at the Sichos and Farbrengen, not only the Mugadik is one thing. The Mugadik is written more in the form of a Torah, a Kasha and a Teretz. But in the Farbrengen, it speaks to us. You know, Mashpia to Mashpoim, to the Talmidim, to the Bochim, to the Mashpoim. Rebbe speaks, doesn't tell. So we got it. So all this is to bring us to have more the feeling of the month of Elul. This is what we have to have. Now, the way it says in the Sikha there, it means that it became more serious. But serious doesn't mean Yiddish is farchmuret. You know, by other people, you know, when they come to a time when you have to be serious. That's what in the Musadik world, that's how it works. But that's not how it works. Everything is besimcha. Everything is besimcha. Even the Inyan of Tshuva is besimcha. Just as a practical example, we know that the minig is, it used to be, now things changed, that we don't make chasanas the second half of the month. Because years already, because there's Baruch Hashem, so many chasanas, you can't follow that. So the Rebbe allowed, I think it was Zalman Shimon said, and the Rebbe allowed it. And now it's, but Amot was always the second half, except a few months. The month of Oder, and the month of Kislev. And the Rebbe added years ago the month of Elul. Since the month of Elul is a Zman of Rachmim, then you could make it even the second half of the month. Now, one of the Litvish G'deilim, the Bocher asked him, and I remember we saw the contrast, the Bocher asked him, can I get married in Elul? Elul is not for Chassan. Nothing to do with the second half of the month. You can't get married in Elul. Elul is a time when you have to be serious and you can't get married. Because the whole thing is being farchmuret, and the whole thing, that's what you think, you know. It wasn't like that. He says in the Sikha that he's serious, but it has to be, everything has to be simcha, even though it's a stress of tshuva. I want to bring in another, let me finish in a few moments, another nekuda from a Farbrengen that the Rebbe said, Tovshin Choptes Simchas Torah. Because we know that Tovshin Choptes, the Rebbe spoke every Shabbos, every Farbrengen, another piece of Geras HaTshuva. Pasha, the Rebbe taught the Geras HaTshuva like a shir, like a mashpia, gives every Farbrengen the next piece, and was masbid in yonim in the Geras HaTshuva. Came Simchas Torah, the Rebbe said, now we're going to be masbid in the next part of Tshuva. And then the Rebbe said, Simchas Torah, talking about Tshuva. Tshuva is something that's more serious. And Simchas Torah is simcha. How does it work together? So the Rebbe says, first of all, we see it's not so. You see, in Simchas Beis HaShe'eva, one of the things they used to sing, Ashrei Misha Lechoto, or Misha Choto Yoshev. So we're talking about Tshuva, even the biggest simcha. But Bechlal, the Rebbe explained, I remember that very Geschmack word, that he said at the other Rebbe, Simcha and Tshuva go together. I care very much. This is what the Rebbe explained. He quoted the Rambam. The Rambam says in the end of Hilchas Lulav, Simcha shel mitzvah avodah gdeilahi. Simcha b'mitzvah avodah gdeilah. And the Rambam explains What's so special about it? What's the simcha about? So the Rambam explains, Simchas hakel shetziva isono. The simcha that the Eibishter commanded us to do the mitzvahs. This is what the Rebbe explains. Another Amorim, it says in the Kudah that the Eibishter is so removed from us. We're nothing up the Eibishter, less than a cockroach. I mean, nothing. And you feel separated. Imagine a person who is a nobody, a simple person, and he looks at the biggest president. What kind of connection does he have? And if that person will come over to him and ask him to do me a favor, it's nothing. Do me a favor. Go to the store across the street, buy me something. You'd feel jumping from joy, and we could relate to it. Imagine if the Rebbe, from the president, if the Rebbe would see you walk out of his room in 770 and see you standing there, and he says, "Do me a favor. Go across the street, buy me a piece of mezainis." You think about it for days. Baruch Hashem, I had the schus that he asked me to do something for him. If somebody doesn't become happy when this happens, something wrong with him. Has to be something wrong. Because it's not a normal thing. Same thing here. We love the Eibishter. The fact that the Eibishter commanded us to do the mitzvah before you even do it. The fact that the Eibishter said, "I want you to do mitzvah," he told us what to do. That itself has to make you the simcha. Because who am I? And the Eibishter lowered himself to me, like I said in Tanya. Then the Rebbe said, "Ma'ador by a regular mitzvah." The Eibishter lowered himself to a person. You have to be the simcha. The mitzvah of tshuva was given to who? To a balavera, which is lower than a regular person. And even to him, the Eibishter lowered himself and gave a mitzvah. So you could imagine the simcha that you have. You're such a low life that you did avedas. And the Eibishter says, "I'm coming to you and giving you mitzvah." That should be the simcha. So they have explained why Adarabah, in the time of simcha, you have to have the tshuva. And in the time of tshuva, you have to have simcha. So upon him, here we go. This is how we look at things. This is what Chassidus looks at things. The Welt doesn't know this. You speak to people a lot of times, and anything that we say, these inyonim of masbir, what tshuva is, and what that's Yid is, and Chalvatzim says, they go out of the kelim. If the son, unless the guy's a nugget, but like this, my son Chaim was once in a place. He used to go to a hotel. He went a few times and he spoke, and there are all kinds of there. Litvish, real from Chedish Eden, Chassidish Eden, and he spoke. He went under the kelim. Hear such things. So one guy walks over to him and says, "Listen here. Don't be a balgaive from all the thanks that you get. Tell you why. Any Lubavitcher that would speak here, this is what would happen. Because we don't hear these words. We don't know these things. Today they're overwhelmed when they hear if it's the way the Rebbe has something to explain. And for that you have to say Ashreinu Matei Chokeno. So when we know what the Rebbe explains what tshuva is, and I didn't go into it because that we learned that's something that's supposed to give us apsa and supposed to be happy about it. But the bottom line is that we have to take it serious. That's the whole word. And I'm not trying to tell anybody anything. I'm trying to convince myself. That's what the meaning of a Farbrengen is, to talk and try to talk to yourself. Elamai, if a person sits down and talks to himself, they'll take you to a crazy house. So you got to have other people listening also, but that's really what it is. To take serious, like it says in the Mittel Rebbe writes in Derech Chaim. Derech Chaim, the first 10, 12 prokim is very Avedidik, very Avedidik. Used to be Wochen in 770. Remember my times that used to learn Elul, learn Derech Chaim, but they didn't want people to see, so they would go hide and sit down. It used to be the boiler room, was it called? In 770 downstairs, there's the boiler room. So Wochen used to go and hide in the boiler room. I remember I once opened the boiler room as a young bocher, and I see a bocher sitting there learning over Derech Chaim. So in Derech Chaim, he speaks a lot there about Kabbalah Seil versus Prika Seil. That's what he says. Very, but this is very simple, down to earth, Poshet Aveda. And he says there in, I think in parentheses, the Inyan Kabbalah Seil, HaNikra, Beloshen Idish, Enskite. Enskite. That's all. To take it serious. Our problem is that we don't think serious. We don't take things serious. It's this, it's that. If you take serious the senior that the Rebbe speaks about, and what Torah says about the union of Elul, it'll give us a little kitzel and do it. And I'm trying to convince myself. I'm having a hard time because I don't really feel it. But if you talk about it, it makes it happen. Keil Meire Rakavone. So I'd like to say L'chaim, the Eibush is helpful. We should take it all serious and take it to ourselves and know it means me. Like the Rebbe when he sang the Stav Yapitu, the second time, not the first time at night, Fatog, but the next night, and he sang it over and he came, oh, Yechesh ben Tzedek, oh, Davati, so he says, oh, Yechesh ben Tzedek, das meint me mir und dir und dir und dir. He pointed, and that made such a, he said it, and the Sichel I'm saying it, Toshan Chavtes, made me say it, so, L'chaim, we should get in the Seder and take it seriously, Sai L'gaba us, and also L'gaba Zula, but the Rebbe goes together, Avedim Atzman, Avedim Azulas, but to help the Zulas, you got to be something. If you're not, I mean, about the Rebbe says, if you know Aleph base, someone doesn't, it's enough to teach him. Of a Sof Kasov, you have to be something. And also our kids, that's one of the things we have to remember. We have to instill in our kids. Our kids have to see, the children, they grow up, they have to see the atmosphere of the home, and that is the main thing. That the biggest chinuch is the atmosphere in the home, more than teaching and saying. So, if we can give a brach, the Eibush is a help, we should do it. About the Eibush is a help him. We got the Lepel do it. L'chaim. I know we always try to sing a nigun, and never works. Should we try again?
Right.
Let's try. Let's sing the nigun that Siddim used to sing when they famous sing with Tuka B'Chedesh, Chedesh Ashvi and Shuva Yisroel. That's going to the Rebbe for Tishrei. I don't know, or any nigun, or Avinu Akenu. I know, but the Rebbe Avinu Akenu was like an El nigun. The other one was more Tishrei. That's why at the end of the Farbrengen of Chofov, many times, Chofov, that's when you saw that by the Rebbe starts Abed of Elul. Chofov is Chofov, Chamishos B'Av. The end happened quite a few times. Now he said, sing Avinu Malkein. And I saw, you could see, it made such an impression. I don't know how other people picked it up. This is it. Now this past, now starts new Aved of Elul, and the Nigun of Avinu Malkein. So if you want to sing, I think maybe we should sing it. Shabbos, they used to sing Amol, but later the Rebbe said Shabbos, they shouldn't sing Avinu Malkeinu because we don't say Avinu Malkeinu on Shabbos. But now it's much Shabbos. Now I'm giving over the floor to Rabbi Spalter. Okay. It's all yours.
I don't know if he heard you.
I heard him. I heard. L'chaim. It is a, first of all, Yashikech, the Balach Sanya, who by Erchman, by Frankfurter, organized these Farbrengen. So
really, it's a Farbrengen that's organized from Beis Menachem.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
And it's good. No, I'm saying it.
Good, very good tikkun. I'm sorry. Yeah. Rabbi Shapiro at Farbrengen the last hour very, very eloquently about the tshuva in Lubavitch, Elul in Lubavitch, told the Yonim of how the Rebbe talked about explained the yukim that the Rebbe was medayik in the Friedrich Rebbe Siches. So there's a known word that Chai Elul that the reingebracht brought in a new chayis into Elul. Chai, Meloshen chayis, that the Alter Rebbe and the Baal Shem Tov, the Aliyema letters of Chai Elul brought in a chayis, a new life into Elul. And as Rabbi Schapiro explained that by the Elul Misha, the tshuva of Elul is not a time to make chasanas. It's not a time for anything. Obviously, the tshuva is a serious thing, and you went through a whole year, and everyone knows where he is and where his leaked. So b'meila they take it, they take it to the simply the tshuva means to return and to repent, to do tshuva for your Vedas, and they focus on that very much, as it was done for thousands of years with Pashtus. God came to Alter Rebbe and the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe and gave us a whole new appreciation or a new understanding of what real tshuva is. Toshuv Hey, everything that we know about tshuva, about El, Gimel Mitzarachmim, and Rabbi Shapiro mentioned that Andre Vesnafilni don't even know that there's such a Motsei of Gimel Mitzarachmim that is Meir and El. It's a different emphasis. Shlema, you could say, in other words, the tshuva metech simcha, and that is tshuva is not so much about in the grobkeit that we are it was melikten them, but rather the there's a eis hey of the Shem Havaya that's in your neshama, and you have the Eibush is close to us, and so on, and that's what tshuva is in Chassidus. So yeah, we could say the shleimer that in Elul alone, in this new chayis in Elul, that the Rebbe brought in a chayis, a new life in the new life. I want to be makdim to explain this a minute. A ma'aseh that I once heard that's been going around lately. I heard it in different nuschois, and I'll share it with you because it's a good ma'aseh. And it's the ma'aseh happens somewhere in the late Tafshins. In other words, Tafshin Hey, Tafshin Vav, Zayin, one of those years. There was a chassid who everyone knew him, and many knew him, Rabbi Shlomo Aaron Kazarnovsky. He was sent from the Friedrich Rebbe at some point during that time. He was meant to go to Chicago, I think Chicago, to settle an issue that was going on over there. Besides raising money, there was some kind of an issue that had to be dealt with over there between Anash, the Kehillah, something over there. And the Friedrich Rebbe asked him if he can go there to settle this matter. And they were talking in Yechidus on the strategy, how to do it. What's the best way to deal with it? And the Friedrich Rebbe gave him his opinion, what he thinks would work and the right way to go about it. But the Friedrich Rebbe then tells him at the end that, he says, before you go right downstairs is my son-in-law, says the Rebbe, and go ask him, talk to him also about this inyan, and ask what his opinion is. So Rabbi Kazanovsky went downstairs to the Rebbe's office, and of course he didn't tell him that he spoke to the Friedrich Rebbe, what the Friedrich Rebbe said, and he asked the Rebbe what he thought about the strategy, about this, how to deal with this issue. And the Rebbe tells him, that his opinion was completely different than the Friedrich Rebbe's. It was maybe even opposite. It was a ganz anders. So different opinions. So Rabbi Kazanovsky was now in a little bit of a dilemma. Was tut man jetzt? Yeah. On the one hand, the Rebbe gave him an answer what to do. He wants to do what the Friedrich Rebbe said. That Sheni, the Friedrich Rebbe is the one that told him to ask the Rebbe. He went back to the Friedrich Rebbe to tell him what happened. So the Friedrich Rebbe heard this, and And the way the nusach that I heard the number of nuschos, but what the Frierdiker Rebbe told him was, Rabbi Schapiro, if you know it better, correct me in the exact language. I think it's Negeya. And as Gor Anders, and one nusach says as a Shemzach for him. I don't know if that's correct, if that's taka true, that Rebbe Frierdiker Rebbe said such a thing. But what he did tell him was that an andere, he's a broad mind.
I heard he said that they had a chazaka. I heard also.
Chazaka. Chazaka.
But who knows what's true? I mean, we all.
Oh yeah. As I might, the story is a mice that did happen. And as Gor Anders, the Rebbe said, as the Frierdiker Rebbe said about the Rebbe as Gor Anders. That's the story, and there's a proscript to that story. The bottom line, the Frierdiker Rebbe told him that he should listen to what the Rebbe said. I heard later that the Rebbe found out about this. That he didn't tell him that the Frierdiker Rebbe told him before something else. So I heard that after that, when the Rebbe found out about it, he never ever gave an eitzah to anyone ever again on such matters. That's what I heard. But the reason I'm telling you the story is about the word that the Rebbe's got anders. When you talk about the 7 Rebbes, the 7 Deiras, we see them have always, I don't know where it comes from, but it's Mistame Emes. I've seen them say it. It's probably true. Maybe it even comes from the Rabbi. That our 7 Rebbes represent the 7 spheres. Who?
The Frierdiker Rebbe said it.
Frierdiker Rebbe said it. Yeah. That these are the 7 Deiras. I think the Frierdiker Rebbe started from the Baal Shem Tov Mistame. Yeah. But the spheres, the 7 midas, are the definitely from the Rebbe, from the Alter Rebbe. In other words, we also know that it says that the 7 spheres, 7 midas, correspond to the days of the week. So Chesed, the Sunday, and Malchus, the Shabbos. Yes, that the Rebbe is the Shvi. So the Rebbe is the union that corresponds. Our Deir Shvi, corresponds to the union of Shabbos. And Shabbos is Taka Gor Anders. Shabbos is a different day of the week. So not from Sunday to Monday is a leap, but it's not this Genish Gor Anders. Shabbos is Gor Anders. It's a different day, it's a different thing, it's a different world. Why am I telling you this? Well, there's a difference between, we saw, let's take the union of Elul that Rabbi Schapiro spoke about. You ask any 5-year-old kid today, what is Elul? He'll tell you Elul is Amelech Masada, the king is in the field. Every 5-year-old knows that the king is in the field. He comes home the first week in Elul with a crown on his head that his teacher made with him. The Amelech Masada, the king is in the field. Everyone knows it. But I'm telling you that 100 years ago, kids did not know about Hamelech Basada. And Bechlal, the whole mashal of Hamelech Basada, if you look into the Mevorchim of the previous Rabbeim, of the Deiras from the Alter Rebbe is the one that said the mashal Nukudetera, versteht sich. But going down from Deir to Deir, you look into Mevorchim, Hamelech Basada, the mashal of Hamelech Basada is hardly even mentioned. And Yiludedi is mentioned, Yigim with Sarachim is mentioned, Asarus Leili, Sarus Lotata, what comes first. These in Yonim are explained by the Rabbeim. Hamelech Basada is almost never mentioned by the Rabbeim, and there was very little emphasis on this mashal for 6 days. That's the emes. And the Rebbe, Mitamol, obviously there's the Maimer from the Frierdiker Rebbe in Tafshin, where he talks about the mashal and he makes a few changes in the mashal. But that's one Maimer, one thing, one time. How many times did the Rebbe speak about Hamelech Basada? He spoke about it thousands of times. I mean, literally thousands of times. In the sichos to the kids, in the sichos to the women, in the sichos to the Tan Shabbos by the Farbrengen, non-stop. What is El Hamelech Basada? What was Elul in the days of from the Alter Rebbe down till the Frierdiker Rebbe? Elul was about like Rabbi Geret Frieding of Tshuva, as Tshuva Mitech Simcha, then you have Gil Midas Arachme, made it tremendous in Yonim. I heard from my Chassid ones that the in the till the Rebbe, till our generation, the union of Elul and even the Maimer Anila date of the Frierdiker Rebbe, of the Alter Rebbe, the big emphasis was on the second chapter of Anila Date. There's 3 chapters in that Maimer. The first chapter talks about where the Amela Basada appears. He asks the Shaila, why is it not Yom Tov, the whole thing, and he answers Amela Basada. He doesn't even finish the Moshel. And then he says that the Eibush is the Sagiluf and Kela Hashem Vayorlanu, those in Yonim. The second chapter, he begins to explain the union of Tshuva. What happens when he does the sins and stegnish, and he's should he do Tshuva? Bikashta Misham, you have to go look where you sinned, where you fell, and where's Misham? Misham is in the Klippe, go find where you made the mistake, and that's where you have to start finding in the Sham, it got lost in that sin, etc., etc. And then the Alter Rebbe goes on and says that what happens if someone does that and he can't find it, and what does finding it mean? In other words, the Tshuva is to be me'eira rachmim on his own neshama. What happens if someone does that and it castigates him? It doesn't go. He can't be me'eira rachmim. It's not going. He knows that he did wrong. When a lichten garnished, he's not in the right place, but he's not upset about it. He's not. It's not touching him. It's not moving him. He goes over there a few dargas until he comes and he explains that he says al piteva, when you bruise yourself, you should hurt. You should hurt, right? The Alter Rebbe starts over there. He gives another moshel. He says v'nosa olav hamoshel hazeh, that a person has to bring upon himself. In others, which is also, by the way, this lashon v'nosa olav hamoshel hazeh is also a very unique lashon in Chassidus. I once heard that the famous Chassid Lubavitch, Rabbi Michal der Alter, every Elul or the Shchedesh or Shabbos and Mevorchim Elul, during that time, he would teach for the Talmidim, I guess, the Maimer Anila Deide from the Alter Rebbe. He would learn it every year with them. And he would cry during the Maimer when it came to the second chapter, the second Perek. He would, so the Numen, because how to do the Tshuva, and you have to be made a Rachman, Shaman, all the things that it touched him, and he started crying. But he gathered himself together and he learned further. Another few lines. He got further and further. When he got to the Moshe Bonosa, all of Moshe Lazar, when he got to those words, he started crying so much that he closed the Sefer. He was unable to teach further. Why? V'nosa olav. This Moshe is not Stama Moshe. You have to apply it to yourself. V'nosa olav Moshe Lazar. You have to apply the Moshe to yourself. What's the Moshe over there? That if your foot bangs into something, it's going to hurt. But that's only if your foot is still connected to your body. If it's disconnected, it's not going to hurt anymore. So that's what the Alter Rebbe says over there. That's why we don't feel the Rachmanis, because we disconnected. He says the Mazel is that way, you can reconnect. You can reconnect. But Rabbi Michal der Alter, he couldn't go further anymore. He was the Numen, that was Elfim, and also all of our Moshe Lazar. In other words, now all the generations till our time, till the Rebbe, even the new Chayis in Elul was also a meaning from Tshuva, the gekocht, the meaning from the second Perek. The Moshel Amelech Basada was mamish a Moshel that it wasn't known, it wasn't spoken of. It was known maybe, but it wasn't a big emphasis in the Maimorim, in the Chassidim, Bechlal. The Rebbe took this Moshel out of the Likutei Torah and made it a Moshel. He made it a living Moshel that's the ganze El with Amelech Basada. And we also know that the Rebbe was metayik in this Moshel, the Yukim Nifloim. I mean, if you learn them, the Maimer of Chavav, the Maimer of Lamed Beis, and other places in the Sichas and Tafshin, all over the place. The Rebbe is medayik the yukim nifloim in this moment. But it's all about Amelech Basada. What's the difference? Taposh the difference. What was the emphasis of the Rebbe? There's a Rebbe in Shabbos. Yeah, the Rebbe Deir Shvi is the Inyan of Shabbos. What's the difference between Shabbos and the weekday? You know, there's a lot of differences, but in Halacha Posh, the Rebbe says it's a mind. The Rebbe talks about it in Maimorim also, that the difference between Shabbos and Yemei Sachel, in Yemei Sachel, there's a bitter, you have to be Mevara the world, right? The whole meaning of Dirup Tachtenim to be Mevara the world. But the difference between the weekday and Shabbos is that in the weekday you're better Pseilus M'teich Eichel, right? You're allowed to. In the weekday you're allowed to be Mevara, you're allowed to do the Malach of Better, right? What is Better? Better Pseilus M'teich Eichel. You take the bad out of the good. That's what bitter is. You get rid of the negative and you're left with the good. Bitter of Shabbos is just the opposite. Bitter Eichel M'teich Pseilus. That on Shabbos you're supposed to take the good away from the bad. In other words, the emphasis is on the good. Mevorchim sich nicht with the bad. While the Rebbe, you read the Igris, you see it all over. Talk to people that wrote to the Rebbe about Atikun and Yonim. I had a friend once that he wrote to the Rebbe Amol. He was chosen as a shliach, and he wanted a tikkun for certain inyanim in his life. So when he's chosen as shliach as a bocher, he was going to go on shlichus, and he wrote to the Rabbi, I can't become a shliach with this baggage, with this pseilus that I have. I have to get, you got to take care of that first. Help me get rid of that pseilus first. I don't know the exact words that he wrote, but that was the mashmah, that was the teichem of his letter. And the Rebbe answers him, you should go, you should learn Chassidus B'Shufi, that was what the Rebbe answered him, and you should forget about the past. Don't think about it. Learn Chassidus, Beirer Eichel M'teich Pseilus. Don't think about the Pseilus, don't think about the inyonim of tikkun, of disputes, their chet and their inyan. Doesn't mean that we have to be oblivious, versteht sich. If you're oblivious to your past, so you won't do any birur. But the emphasis of the Rebbe was a Shabbosdik emphasis. That's the truth. And we see it all throughout. Throughout the whole, the Sugar this, another day, it's a different. And in Elul also, take Elul, because the emphasis of the 6 days was all about the second period of Gute Teire, of the Vanilla Deidi, in of Tshuva, Achsidische Tshuva, versteht sich. Obviously. Not a Fachmurate Tshuva like the Elumische. Achsidische Tshuva is another, is a Labdike Tshuva, it's a different Tshuva. By the Rebbe, it was Amelech Basada, it was a whole different thing. And Amelech Basada was a favor from the Moshel Kutetera, no one picked up on it, no one. States that they did, but it was not emphasized. The Rebbe made that, the whole Elul, talk to any kid, like I said. Amelech Basada, that's what Elul is. What's Amelech Basada? The king is in the field. King is in the field is an interesting cloud. I just want to mention also, when you talk about the Moshel Amelech Basada, how the Rebbe was medayik in this Moshel, also, I want to share with you these diyukim that are printed in the Sichos, that also go in line with this whole thing. What does it say over there? How do you understand the Moshel Amelech Basada? What does it answer? How do we? What is Amelech Basada? This Moshel, that the king is in the Heichel Malchusei, and we're Nebuch in the Sada. The Anoshim Pshutim are in the field. Field is Asher Yoshev Adam Sham. It's a place where the Adam Elyon cannot dwell because it's a union of Klippe. Sada Midbar. That's not a place for the Eibishter. In other words, an Anshe Sada is people that are living in the field. It means that their life is not the way it should be. That's what the whole Moshel is. That even though we're Basada, so the Melech leaves the palace and he comes into the Sada to be with us over here and to lift us up and to be maraponim seiches and to give us an opportunity to do tshuva. The Isarus, it's a small Isarus Leila because it's a Sada. It's not exactly a real Isarus Leila, But it's it's there for us. We have to just be makabel. But the Rebbe is medayik. That's how everyone understands it, right? It's Anshe Asode. We're in this field. It's ungarnished. We're not the Wisdarf to sein. The Eibishter with Betuve Agodel, with his great kindness, comes out of his melech, his malchus. He takes off his levushi malchus. He goes onto the soda on our level, and that's why it's the not at the level of a yom. That's the pshat. Says the Rebbe like this. Listen to the I made it a deal. It's a sich in Tashon Chav Beis. I think Pashas Nitzavim. Yeah. The Rebbe says, he says the whole mood, when you look at the words of the Moshel, is in ganzen Fakir. What is the language in the Moshel? The language of the Moshel is, it's not that the Melech is leaving the ear to go out to the Soda. Fakir, there's Kedem Beil the ear. He goes into the Soda. Right? So in other words, where's the Mokim HaMelech in this Moshel? First in the Soda. If later he goes into the Soda, to the ear. In other words, he's Besoda. What about the people? We're Basoda, right? It says, look at the Lashon. The Lashon is Anshiya Ir, Yetzim Likra, they go out to be Mekabel the Mela Basoda. Are we Anshiya Ir, are we Anshiya Soda? What's that mean? And it's, the emphasis when you think about this, it's Taka is Sklepnish. There's something wrong. There's not. So the Rebbe says, Poshet. Af Shabbos Dikkanation. The ganze emphasis is on the Eichel, not the Pselis. What is the word? He says, Be'etzem muhusei of a Yid is Anshe Yid. He finds sich in Soda, he's in the Soda right now. He slipped and he's Zarogefallen, he fell down and he's Beruchnis, he's not where he has to be. What is his Etzem muhusei is Anshe Yid? He belongs in the city, that's who he is. The Alter Rebbe calls him Anshe, that's who we are. The Rebbe points out the Reichkeit of a Yid, the Neshamet. Even the Moshel, the Mela Basada, we're in the ear. The Mezan Anshe. What is the Melech? The Rebbe said the Melech is Basada. Why? So the Rebbe is also medayik that the Yin of Sada is the Yin from Tachtenim, and the Iker Mokim HaMelech is Taka Basada. That's where he wants to be, that's where his machshav is, that's where he wants to be, that's where he's interested in. He's interested in the Soda. And the Anshe Ya'ir, Yetzim, Likrose, Likabel Ponav Basoda. These are, that's how the Rebbe saw the union of Elul. That even in the Chassidische Elul, it's a Shabbos dike El, it's an andere El, it's gar anders, it's a different El. Even the Tshuva it's a different Amel Basada. It's he pushed the Rebbe took this Moshe that was hidden for 200 years and he lifted it up. He made it a Moshe, he made it a Chassidus, he made it the whole emphasis of Chedesh El and therefore of Chedesh Tishrei also. There's other beautiful diyukim in this mashal, that the L'chaim. Rabbi, they told me that it's hard to make sockets for nigunim, so we'll discontinue. But L'chaim kam doch sicher so, L'chaim. That was how the Rebbe lifted up Chassidim throughout the years. Don't look back. Don't emphasize the pselis. Just look for the eichel. Just look for the food, the goodness, the good b'shabbatayich, the anshe ear. You belong in the. That's what you are. That's your etzem muhuz. That's how the Rebbe saw everyone. Kipshute mamish. When you went by $1 to get $1 from the Rebbe, you went to Yechidus, or you go to the El Terei. That's how the Rebbe sees us, and that's how we have to see ourselves. And again, it doesn't mean to be oblivious to the reality who we are. The Rebbe was not oblivious to it, and nor should we be oblivious to it. But what did the Rebbe see? But the core at Arangi Kukti look deeper. And that's how we have to see El. That's the ganze El is Anand. It's the Rebbe's Amoshel. The Amel Basad is really the Rebbe's Moshel. The Rebbe mentions it. It's but the Rebbe is the one that took this Moshel and made it what it is. Explained it from every single angle. Rebbe's Medayik and Tavshin Yud, that the Frierdiker Rebbe added a few shinuyim in the Mosel, right? In Tafshin. One of the shinuyim that he says is Rashoyim v'yechelim, right? The Alter Rebbe says that when the Melech is Basada, then anyone can go over his Rashoyim lahagbul ponav, right? What's the Lashon exactly? Anyone is allowed, he makes himself available. When he's in his Heichel Machusi, not everyone can go in. You need Rishus, you need to be, you can't go in. But in the Sada, everyone is allowed. You're allowed to go in. So the Frierdiker Rebbe adds the words v'yechelim, Rashoyim v'yechelim. That not only are they allowed, but they're also able. They have the ability. What's the ability to go in? Everyone knows what that means. It's not so you don't need to have any pirushim on this. There was a time, the Rebbe once said this in Tafshin Yud, I believe, that there was a time that the doors were closed by the Rebbe. He's talking about the Frierdiker Rebbe. The Frierdiker Rebbe in the later years, you couldn't get into the Frierdiker Rebbe. You couldn't go to his davening. You couldn't go to the Farbrengen. The doors were shut. You had to mamish be from the Yechude Sgula. Yechude Sgula to go in. You're lucky if they had there, you stood by the doors, the Rebbe said, now that all the doors are open, no one comes. That's Rashoyim. You're allowed to come in. You have an open door, the door is open for you. You know, Rabbi Reuven Dunin was a person that it's what I once heard, but I once heard that Reuven Dunin had an open door policy with the Rebbe. He was able to knock on the door and go in whenever he wanted. Rashoyim. And Mega Rangi is allowed to go into the Rebbe whenever he wanted. I don't know how that happened and why he was zeichet to such a thing. But as that was the Motsei. He was able to go into the Rebbe whenever he wanted. But what is v'yechelim? What's the hisof of v'yechelim? So the Rebbe over there in the Sikha says that v'yechelim means that's necessary today. Today you have to add that word. The Chassidim of the Alter Rebbe, if you just told them they'll let it go, they knew what to do. They were able to, they made their way in. It was enough to stir them, to get them to do what they have to do in Elul. Anoshim Kerekenu, people like on our level, which were in a lower matziv, a lower ruchnis matziv. So the Frierdiker Rebbe felt it necessary to add the word Rashoyim. Not only are you allowed to, the door is open to a king, but v'yechelim. You can, and you have the yechelis also. What does v'yechelim mean? You Pasha can do it. Reuven Dunin, when he was in Israel, he couldn't go in. He was a Rashoyim, but he wasn't yechelim. He couldn't go in. He was 10,000 miles away, 6,000 miles away. He couldn't go in. He was Rashai, but he wasn't Yachel. Here's Rashoyim v'yechelim. Elul the Chatzai, at the end of the day, was on the Chassidim, we're all Chassidim of the Rebbe, and when we said Amelech Basada, like Beima was, when the like Beima parade, we used to think of Amelech Basada. The Rebbe came out, the Soda, Yefi, Malchusei, Bura. But in Elul, that's what it is. That's what Elul is. And this year especially, there's a massive of Rashoyim, but there's a limit on the Yechelim. Not everyone can make. You couldn't go to New York and Gimel Tammuz. Gefal the Yechelim. There's Rashoyim, but there's no Yechelim. We can't go. And then maybe today you could go. Maybe more people go today than they did 3-4 months ago. But there's a limitation. People are afraid to get on that plane. People are afraid to go to the hill. People are afraid to travel. People are afraid to go around people. I'm a little less today than it was, but still, Rashoyim, but there's. So I don't know how to answer that problem because this matziv Heva is a modern matziv, and we have to go into the Elul. If you can't get there, you have to go in a different way. Machshava, whatever it is, write a letter. Rabbi Schapiro mentioned Mokim Shemachshavte Shalom Shama Nimtze literally is Pashut is mamish bepale. I think he told the story. Hashem told someone after Davin Shalom Aleichem. Yeah. He was in his machshav, he was in Leipzig, so he welcomed him back and his travel to Leipzig. It was with Pashtas. So the emphasis Rashoyim v'yechelim. we're able to go into the Rebbe. We have an open door. The Rebbe is open to every single one of us. And he doesn't emphasize the Pselos at all. It's the Shabbos of the Welt. It's a generation of Shabbos, which is Birer Eichel Matech Pselos. And the emphasis that Mashiach, the Rebbe goes further in that whole inyan. He says, when Mashiach will come, there won't even be Birer Eichel Matech Pselos. There won't be any Birer. There'll be a clean world. There will be no need for Birer. We're not there yet, gemoving vegan post. Wir darf noch mevara sein ein bisschen. And but this we see how the Rebbe took the whole inyan of Elul and elevated it. The idea that can, why did there was what was the chiddush over here? Why didn't the previous generations have this? Because they didn't need it. It was a different time. Today we have to be told that this. We have to be taught a different emphasis, a different nekuda. The nekuda today is Amel Basoda. Was the first perek. The Rebbe's whole emphasis of Anila Deidi, the Maimorim, was the first perek. You know, hardly ever spoke about the second perek on Anila Deidi. He did, obviously, here and there, but the emphasis was on the first chapter. You give me the Sarach Anila Deidi, the whole Mel Basoda, the Maraponim Seiches, how that's a Risur. It's not really a bit. The whole thing that Rabbi Schapiro was discussing before. We have to know that we have to take a do tshuva. There's no question about it. Because if you don't, is b'chalal not shaykh the whole. You can't go into. Then you're missing the whole inyan. But what is the tshuva? That's the shaykh. Tshuva till now was a chiddush tshuva. Today it's amel basod. It's a different thing. It's not even pselis. You're not even thinking about the pselis. You're thinking about the eichel. So the Melech, he wants to be near me, and I'm gonna be near him. Yechelim, we can go in, and that's all the Eibishter wants. Marapon Seichis, he's not angry at us, he's not upset at us, and he wants us to come. Just make that one step, go over to him, go out of the midbar into the soda. That's the whole emphasis. That's what he wants. In the midbar alone, the Eibishter can be mamish in the midbar and gimel klipsat meis. That's what it's explained. That the difference between midbar and soda is taka midbar is a place where the Eibishter can be. You're not going to find the Eibishter in Gimel Klippus Atmeis. In sin, in a place of Midbar Mamish, you won't find him. But we're not shaykh to go into to transform ourselves like that. So the Maimer says, go out of the Midbar into the Sod. Meet him halfway, so to say, right? But says the Rebbe, it's not meet him halfway. He wants to be in the Soda. The Eibishter is he is Basoda. That's his main place. That's where he wants to be. Is Dira B'Tachtenim, not in our sin Chas V'Sholem, but the Mokim Soda, where Ayid Gefinzach in Elam Hazatach, where we find ourselves now. That's what the Eibishter wants to be. Obviously, the whole idea is to bring the Tachten and bring it into Eichel HaMelech, Hamuvim. Obviously, on Rosh Hashanah. To be stuck in the Sada and should be tachten is there. He wants the dira b'tachtein. The dira is the heichel malchusi, but the heichel malchusi is in tachtein. That's what El was. That's how the Rebbe taught us El. And I did a little research on this. Pashat, I asked around a little bit, and I found that the Melech Basada was hardly ever taught. No one ever spoke. You talk to a kid today, and even adults, you would think that since the Alter Rebbe's time, what is Amel Basada was the whole Elul was about Amel Basada. But it's not them. It's not true. It is true because that was the Teichen Inyan, but it wasn't spoken. That's what I mean. Machol the Alter didn't talk about Amel Basada so much. He talked about us. He started crying. He couldn't move further. He couldn't get his he couldn't see. He closed the book. He couldn't teach further. All of a sudden, there's a different emphasis. The emphasis, this Nakud of the Rebbe, how the Rebbe turned the whole day into Shabbos the Kedei. You see it through and through in every single inyan that the Rebbe did. You see it in the Igris Kaddish. I said the story about one of my Chaverim that wrote to the Rebbe when he went on Shlichus. It's all over the Igris. It's all over people that will tell you they went to the Rebbe for these Yonim, And that was what the Rebbe told them. He didn't tell them how to deal with their sin. He didn't tell them that. He didn't tell them how to be mevared themselves. He told them, stop looking there. The previous Rabbeim gave a Seder Atikun. Previous Rabbeim, the Ferish did give a Seder Atikun for Yonim of Toim. And whatever it is, they elevated people in a different way. So then, Bira, a Pselis from Teich Eichel. It was a week, it was Friday, it was Thursday, it was Wednesday. Oh, I mean, we're no one to be able to understand the difference between the Rabbeim. I mean, it would be silly to start now saying what Pshat, the Rebbe is to be mechalek between the Rabbeim and what we know what the Rebbe said in the Mechsichas and the Maimon. We can just build on that to understand what it is. That the Rebbe is the Deir Hashvi, and we're all part of that Shabbos Dikadeir, and that's the union. And you see it all over the union for Shlichus. I once heard from Manas Friedman, Geschmack word. He said that the Rabbeim, the Rebbe Rashab made Tem Chetmimim. The Alter Rebbe wrote Tanya. What is the Tanya? The Tanya teaches a Yid how to become a Beinani. How to get it, how to deal with the Nefesh Habamis and not to let it in, and all the prokim that talk about this. The whole Tanya, basically. The Rebbe Rashab made Tem Chetmimim. Aveda, Skafia, Aveda, David Bariches. The whole Aveda of Tem Chetmimim, all the stories that were heard from Mashpim, Moleka Mashpim, Shilim, Grainim, all these Mashpim, what was the Aveda in Lubavitch to daven, the Bochum daven 4 hours a day, 6 hours did Mashpim. They davened, they praved the Skafia. We were told when we were young boys, everyone over here knows, that what was the Farbrengen about? That when in Tem Chetmimim, when they put on table food, so they put bread and they put butter. So the Bachim in Tem Chetmimim would eat the bread and the butter as two separate things. They wouldn't smear the butter on the bread. It was unbecoming of a Bachim to go smear butter on his bread. So these were the stories that we heard, right? That they would take the spoon or whatever it was, take a piece of butter, put it in the mouth, and they put a bread in the mouth. That's how they ate it, if they even ate the butter. The whole discussion, the whole Aveda was a skafia. There was a different, that's what it was. Whatever the Rabbeim tried to elevate people, to make them chassidim, to make them Bali Mesiris Nefesh, Bali Skafia, Hechri Yidin, higher people, elevated people, to take the Nefesh Habamis and work with it a little bit, to turn it over a little bit. When you look at the 50 years, 60 years of the Rebbe was Mesif. He was not Gereya Chas v'Sholom. He never said, he was also, the Hisaf of Deir Hashvi was not to exclude or to diminish Chas v'Sholom anything of the previous generations. But every generation had its emphasis. What was the emphasis of today? Of this generation from Tavshin Yud and on? Let's even take the Yin of Shlichus. Yin of Shlichus, the Rebbe sent Shluchim all over the world. So the Rebbe sent Shluchim to, did he give you an interview? What are you good at? Are you a good speaker? You're a good teacher? Rabbi Chadikov called in the people and asked them, we're looking for someone as a good mechanech that they need. Somewhere in Minneapolis needs a good mechanech. We want to send you. We're looking for a mechanech. We need a baldarshan to go. They didn't look for talent. There was anyone looked for talents. They looked for the geschickt. What was the job? What was the job description for shluchim? No, there was no job description. What am I supposed to do over there? Go there and find out yourself. Whatever the Eibishter needs you to do, that's what you'll do. It's a Shabbos Hayem Lashem. It's a Shabbos Digazah. It's all about the Eibishter. It's not about you. And on Sunday, Monday, we're working to be me'er, to be mevarer things. We're looking to elevate ourselves. Absolutely, we're doing work. And Shabbos Kol Mlacht Chasuya. What does that mean? The Peil Mamish. He didn't look for any. He didn't look for any talents. That wasn't what it was. elevate this person, that person. Deine miles, deine are your advantages, your talents. Of course, the Rebbe told everyone to use their talents. He said that more than once. He said that was a big, but that wasn't in the Kudah. The Kudah is what you gave you. The Eibush gave you a talent, use it. Versteht sich. But it wasn't about you. It was what a city needs a shliach. Go do it. He took people that, he would tell people that were Meiridikas Chassidim that had tremendous ability. He told them, no, you teach. You teach kids, 5-year-olds. Because that was what's needed. It wasn't about what you're good at. Versteht sich. If you're good at something, utilize it. But it was a different kind of, it was a whole different approach. It was a Shabbosdik approach. It's not about making it, it's not about elevating the shliach. What are you? What's your shleimus? In Tanya, it's about elevating the human being, making him a being, making him a mensch, to work with enough Shabbamis to turn it over. The Rebbe took a different road, a different, not different chashon, but it was the emphasis. I mean, that gosha. The emphasis was a totally different emphasis. And this runs through almost everything that we see from the Rebbe. You know, this item by item, one thing after the other. You see how the Rebbe took one subject after the next, and I don't want to say turned it on his head, but gave it a completely different look, and he found the diamond, the etzem of Yed Zach, and that's what it became. That's what it became. That's what it became. It's nicht Anshe Yesod, it's Anshe Yid. You talk to any mashpia in Lubavitch, they read this mashal. Probably, I would guess that even most of us probably also see it that way. What's the mashal? We're stuck in the Sodom. The Eibush comes out of his palace to the Anshe, to the Anshe Sodom. No, the Rebbe says, Punkt verkehrt. The Rebbe goes from the Sodom, the Eibush goes from the Sodom. He's okay, Basodeh. That's where the king begins, is Basodeh. Then he goes into the ear, where we come out of the ear to be Makabel upon the Basodeh. So it's Punkt verkehrt, and we understand the motion. But the Rebbe was the one that emphasized that brought that out. 200 years of Verstanden anders. But the Rebbe emphasizes these in Yonim, because the Rebbe Taka looks, he found the Eichel. It's all about, there's no room for pselis. The Rebbe taught all of us, and the ganze day, every single year that came into his, don't look back. You don't belong in the Soda, and that's not what you are. If you're there, that's not where you belong. That's not your Metzias. It's not only you don't belong there. You're a city person, where the king lives, where the king is. Begili. L'chaim. You should have a emes chassidus in Elul. We have to correct a thing or two in our life. We should do that. But not because we're getting stuck in that. Well, because when you're busy with the melech, you automatically, once you take this eichel, you take it out of the pselis. So the pselis gets separated and finished. The emphasis on the eichel. That was the Rebbe. It's a gar anders. It's an andere word. It's a whole different thing. I want to be careful not to say Chashon that the Rabbi, no one needs to be explained that this is not it's just that he suffered on the past, but it's a made of the case suffer. It's a whole different world. It's not Sunday to Monday. It's the weekday to the Shabbos. We're in Shabbos. And that's the way the Rebbe saw things. He lifted us up into Ruchnis Dike Matziv. We were not shaykh to it, but Takanat. Because we all know each other. We know it ourselves. We look in the mirror, we see who we are, we know what we're into, we know what interests us, we know what our taivas, we know what we're poor, we're anshe asada, even worse, right? In the midbar. But if you you would look at the Rebbe talking to us, you would think that he's talking to tzaddikim. Because that's taka how the Rebbe, not tzaddikim, but whatever, you know. Yeah, hechere Yidden. The Rebbe spoke to us like we're hechere Yidden. And the emes is that the Rebbe, we know that the Rebbe once said is that when the Frierdiker Rebbe, I think when he wrote Titulin, the Rebbe took this, he made it possible for a v'yechelim, Rashoyim v'yechelim. It's not only we're allowed to be in the Rebbe's world, v'yechelim, it's possible for us. It's not shot that you have to work on it, and a ganze Meise, and Chaim Takim, so we should lift ourselves up and tune into the Rebbe's world. Give it over to our kids, Taka Bisala. Kids are innocent, the kids want to hear something from us. Emma's a little bit more of a, they're pure, so we have to keep them pure. L'chaim, l'chaim.
Chaim.
Anyone else want to say something? Isn't they? Yeah. You talk about Anila Deidi, right? Yeah. Anyone where's Rabbi Erich when he's here?
Yeah, I'm listening.
Or you have to only listen, kannst du besorgen, Eichet? Yeah, listen. Yeah. L'chaim, l'chaim. Ya drawa ya tiridim ya draya ya draya drawa ya tiridim ya draya ya Hey Motsei kosimar. Let me take this words. A Motsei kosimar. What the Baal Shem Tov wrote to his brother-in-law, that he went up to Heichal HaMashiach and he asked him, Motsei kosimar, and he answered him, if you would ask a Lubavitcher Chassid today, what is Gans Chassidus? What is the whole the Baal Shem Tov? What is everything that he is? Or what's the whole inyan of the Baal Shem Tov? If a fotzes on my Yonis chutz, right? It's the obvious answer. And that's what's going to bring Mashiach. But I don't know if you know this, but the inyan, these words, those 3 words, look throughout the 6 Rabbeim, from the Alter Rebbe down to the Frierdiker Rebbe, and see how many times they said these words. The inyan of a fotzes on my Yonis chutz. Huh? How many times did they write these words, say these words? How many times did they? Was that the biggest inyan in Chassidus in the Alter Rebbe's time, in the Mittler Rebbe's time, in the Baal Shem, in the later day Rabbeim? I'm telling you, you'll be surprised to find that it's hardly mentioned. It's almost not there. You would, I would say, that's whole ganz Chassidus is your futzum an sechel chutz, no? Another inyan that the Rebbe Pashut took, and because we're in a unique generation, that became ganz Chassidus. What's a futzum an sechel chutz? To go out into the chutz and bring the mayonis. on shlichus, right? The emphasis became a different emphasis. Do what the Eibishter wants to bring Mashiach, Gei Zay Meifid Zemayonis, all the way into the Chutz Shem, Chutz. There's no more Chutz than that. Yeah, the word, the furthest corners of the world, and geographically and also conceptually. But Rabbeim in the past, there was such an emphasis on your chutzah, on the secha chutzah. No, the emphasis on your own chutzah. You have to become a mensch. That's to have, you just lift yourself up, grab yourself by the sides and lift yourself up. Tanya, the Aveda of Chassidus, Kuntras Aveda and Kuntras Atfila, that's what Chassidus was. Rabbi said, yeah, that's what Chassidus is. But what is the whole emphasis today is that and these words, which you would think that is it, right? The Baal Shem Tov heard that from Mashiach himself. What else could it be? It was no one heard that in the first 200 years. That wasn't the big emphasis. What's the Mayonis Chutz? That wasn't talked about. It wasn't a big emphasis. It wasn't. And in the Rebbe's Machtovim and the Rebbe's Sichos and the Rebbe's Farbrengen, it's mentioned, I don't know a number, but it's in the tens of thousands of times, not shot a few hundred times, and every. That's what it's all about. That. I'll give you another example. When the Rebbe talks about the Rebbe Barash, what's the Chatchila Rebbe? The world says if you can't go under, you should go above. I say Chatchila go above. How many times do you think the Rebbe Marash said that to his Chassidim? I don't know the answer, but it wasn't. I think it was one time he wrote it somewhere. He said it and wrote it, I think, one time. He lived it. The Rebbe says that was his whole lifestyle. That was the way the Rebbe Marash was. But you would think that the Chassidim of the Rebbe Marash, that was their whole modus operandi. That's all they talked about. They never heard that. I mean, they never heard that. So Barbarisova, which is a chassid of the Rebbe Marash, I don't know that he spoke about L'chatchila Rebbe very much. He didn't. He talked about Iskafi, he talked about Inyonim, he talked about Inyonim. L'chatchila Rebbe, the Rebbe made L'chatchila Rebbe into a thing. If Hashteitzah became like Amel Basode, the Alter Rebbe is the one that said it. But whoever took it, whoever emphasized it, no one. Who said L'chatchila? The Friedrich, the Rebbe Marash. But it was the Rebbe that said L'chatchila Rebbe is a way of life. Why? But what's L'chatchila Rebbe? It's again. It's the Aveda in Lubavitch and Temchet Mimin in the days of Shilim, the Rebbe Marash, the Rebbe Rashab, and the Friedrich Rebbe. Wasn't L'chatchila? It was a Seder Vadroga. There's an Aveda. You got to take it step by step. You got to elevate yourself. You got to daven, and then you daven better, and then you go a little step higher. When I say them, the Rebbe comes and no, L'chatchila Rebbe. Why? Because this generation needed that. From Sunday you go to Monday. Monday you go to Tuesday. On Shabbos there's no Seder Vadroga. It's a Shabbos Hayom Lashem. It's a different world. It's a different day. L'chatchila Rebbe, you go into a different. He takes lowly individuals and shachtzip garnished. I mean, let's be honest about it. And the Rebbe talks about that you bring Mashiach, L'chatchila Rebbe, all these inyanim that take us into a whole new reality. It's a whole. He lifts us up beyond our kalim. That's what the Rebbe said. Even though you're basada, you're anshe. That's who you are. And this kahena, there's so many different things that you look in the Rebbe's Torah, in the Rebbe's Sichos, and the Rebbe spoke about things. He attributed everything to the Rabbeim of the past. Yeah, you talked to Lubavitch today about the Rebbe Marash, it sounds like the Rebbe is just saying, this is something that the Rebbe Marash had to be kocht, and that was the whole thing I'm reminding you about. It's not the way it was. It's supposed that the Rebbe is genommen, he made it into something. Hamel Basod was an obscure Moshel Kutatera that hardly anyone emphasized it. They knew it, they learned it, they went through it, but they zipped through the first dust into the second dust. That's where they stopped. That's where they made the emphasis. I'm dramatizing it a little bit, but the point is, that's the Nakuda, that's what it was. Once heard that Chitas, even Chitas, which the Frierdiker Rebbe is a Takone, yeah? It's a Maimer HaMuzge. I once heard that in Brunua, they didn't even have made a shir for Tanya. In Tavshin Chest, in those years in the yeshiva, they didn't say Chitas, they didn't even have made a shir. I don't know if that's true. Maybe Rabbi Schapiro can confirm if he's still here. If that's true or not. So the Rebbe Malchus, the Rebbe Shabbos, less Limigar, more Klum, the Rebbe took credit for nothing. Everything was the Frierdiker Rebbe, the Rebbe Rashab, the Rebbe Marash, Chila Rebbe, the Melech Basod, the Alter Rebbe. The Rebbe is the one that brought all this to light. Pashut, he took it from a line in Likud Torah and made it a living Zach. He made a Derech and Leben. He made it what they turned Elul, and he made Elul. So the bottom line is we have to know how Osip Shat, we're lucky and we are fortunate. Ashreinu Matev Chalkeinu. That to have such a Rebbe, Nishgahat, we have. The Rebbe is with us. We should never forget that. Kipshute Mamish. They tell the story of the Badichever, right? Badichever always said that he's not going into Gan Eden until Mashiach comes. When he dies, he's going up to Lamaila, and he's not going to go at the Mishtop. He's not going into Gan Eden until Mashiach comes. He's going to protest. That's it. He's going to stand outside the door. The Rebbe once said this by Farbrengen. What happens to the Frierdiker Rebbe tells this. The Rebbe is quoting the Frierdiker Rebbe. That the Frierdiker Rebbe said that Lepel, when he passed away, he went up Lamaila, and his Taka didn't go into Gan Eden, Fashtikulzai, and they, what do you do? So they opened up the door, I think the Rebbe said, Al Derech Moshel, and he looked inside, he smelled that he was swept in, and he went into Gan Eden. He couldn't resist the tainig of Gan Eden. So Rabbi Levi Yitzchak was swept in, so to say. And Mashiach, even though Mashiach didn't come, so the Frierdiker Rebbe said, "Met min stop kefen," I think, right? And I'm not going to fall, kind of like, I'm not going to allow that to happen to me. Ich gehe nicht in Gan Eden bis Mashiach kommt. Lepel, ich weiß is what? I don't know what it is, Lepel. Well, one thing is for sure, that the Rebbe is nicht gegangen in Gan Eden. The Rebbe is here with us, down here, Pashut Kipshute, in the way he is. What do we know about these things? And even to say that he wouldn't go, there's not in Gan Eden, whatever, but Lepel Mamish Mezetzach B'Muchish, that the Rebbe is down here with us. And not even with our Fleishike Egen, our Grobe Egen, we push it, see what's going on. And the Rebbe is talking, not Pshad, he's upstairs by the door of Gan Eden. He's down here. Norvos, we push it, have to, Zamelach Basoda, the Rebbe is with us Basoda. And the doors are open. Rashoyim v'yechelim, we're able to, and we could. Why could we? The emissaries, we should. It's a chiddush v'yechelim. It's a chiddush that we could. What says you could? You're not. You say, yeah, we're Grubbe Union. I talk for myself. Grubbe Jung. What says you could? How could you go? What says you could go in? You can't go in. Why should you be able to go in like this? The only answer is that the Rebbe is our Rebbe Poshet. He cares for us, and he says, "So unser Reihe Neman." And he's Poshet available. He waits for us to come, and therefore he says, "Come with the baggage." I don't want to say that because it's a chutzpah to go into the Rebbe ungarnished without anything. So obviously you can't, but we could make the connection. Don't wait till you work yourself over in the Amela Basode, Marapon Sheikhkes. You go to the Rebbe for Rosh Hashanah if you can make it, great, and if you can't, do it in the way you could. Ashoyim v'yechelim, the Rebbe is waiting for us to write to him, to visit him. He wants to see us. He's not upstairs, he's down here, Pashut Kipshute. The Muchish. And we just have to, what's the word? The whole Elul, by Schapiro mentioned it, talking about the Yisroel Le'ela, that it was written on Pesach, that Sikha, about the Avir and Lubavitch, right? The Rebbe explains in the Sikha over there that we said on Pesach because Pesach is the time of Anil, of a Deidili. Because every Sarus Latata needs a little bit of a Sarus Le'ela. So that's what it is. Rebbe is Pasha telling us, Ich bin da, I'm here. He shows it us that he's here. Every month in Donishtik, we hear stories of Gabi, stories of people that went to the Ale with Yeshuas, Nechamis, and they got what they needed. The Rebbe was there for them, and I just had my own little story this week. One thing after the other. And Nazay the Maisa. We just have to know that the Melech is Taka Basada. He doesn't want to be Be'ir. His place is Taka Basada with us. He wants to be in our world. He wants to be in our life. He wants to be in our Mishugaisen. There's nothing we should keep from the Rebbe. The Rebbe is there. He wants us to connect to him and tell us what's going on in our life. He wants to hear every nook and cranny. How your kid did in this test and how you're doing with your closing and how you're doing in your business and how you're doing in your health and how you're doing in your davening and how you're doing in your learning. He wants to know everything. Mo, we were told, write Bekitzer to the Rebbe, right? Don't take the Rebbe's time. He doesn't have time for anything. The Rebbe's moments and seconds are mamish precious. I once heard that when the Rebbe went upstairs from davening or from a mincha or whatever, as he was taking off his kapota in his room, he was already taking and he would throw the kapota. Sometimes it landed on the floor and the mosquito would pick it up. He was not looking. He was within seconds. He was with the Gemara with the Sefer. He was as he's taking it off, and it ended up sometimes on the chair, on the floor, wherever it ended up. Every second by the Rebbe was a world, was a Indian. So we were told, don't go to the Rebbe every Sunday for $1. We say, don't take the Rebbe's time. When you write to the Rebbe, write Bekitzer. The Rebbe Taka was very. He told certain people, don't do that, right? Barichis, I want to hear. But Lepeil, the Chassidim said, again, by you bother the Rebbe with your arichis, with your long laundry list. It's the Rebbe doesn't have time for it. So whether that was a correct approach back then, whatever, probably it was. If Chassidim behaved that way, Mustama correct. You can argue whether it was smart not to go to get every Sunday $1. Some say don't the chaparayim, chatei v'achel, get everything you can from the Rebbe. But we didn't. We didn't because we didn't want to bother the Rebbe. The Rebbe's time was precious. The Rebbe stood on his feet, whatever the reason was. But now there's no room for kitzurim. There's no room for such machshavas. The Rebbe is here, begashmis hamelach basada. Begashmis. I don't mean begashmis a goof guy. I mean he's here in our elam agashmis. That's what I mean. He's not in Gan Eden. He's not begins in Meremim. He's here, mamish, down here with us. We have to know that it's the emes, it's pshute, it's really true. And if we live that way, we internalize this, and the Elul is different, and your Rosh Hashanah is different. And even if you're not by the Elul, you're here, you're with the Rebbe. I once heard Rabbi Shapiro, I don't know if he's here, but it's a good story about Mokim Machshavte Shalodim Shabbat Nimtza. You can be somewhere else and be by the ale at the same time. So they tell the story of Yisroel Nevler, the Chassid in Lubavitch, and he was always in Lubavitch as Bacher. He was always for the Yom Tevim. He was a Bacher in Lubavitch, right? And he got married like everyone. You get married, so the minhag was that you settled in the place of your kala, of your wife, by your shver. Either he paid for you or he got your part, whatever. That's where you went. After his marriage, first year of marriage, you went to his shver. He was there for Rosh Hashanah. Comes Rosh Hashanah, Erev Rosh Hashanah. You realize, what did I do? I got married. I'm not going to be by the Rebbe for Tkiyas for Rosh Hashanah. What did I do to myself? He began to feel very depressed and very not good. He decided that he's going to Lubavitch, but he can't get to Lubavitch Begashmir. So what he's going to do is he's going to wake up in the morning, on Rosh Hashanah morning, and he's going to relive his Lubavitch. He's going to, in real time. Davening starts 10 o'clock. He's going to start davening 10 o'clock, and he's going to put his towels over his head. He's going to be in Lubavitch. He's going to stand up when the Rabbi Rasha would do this, and he'll be Motsei Kiyas. He's going to live. He's in Lubavitch. That's it. So he later related that this was going on. That's what he did. And it's Eretz Rosh Hashanah in the morning, and he's davening, and he's in Lubavitch. He's by the Rebbe Rasha, and suddenly, he said, he got distracted. Someone's blowing a whistle. What's he talking about? Someone started blowing shofar in his shul, where he was on this talis. They started blowing a shofar. He said, "Mitamol." Someone started blowing a whistle. To him, that was a whistle. Keys was by the Rebbe that someone's blowing a shofar over there. Moving, he was trying to bring out a point, but they were distracting him. He was feeling, but he was being disturbed. Though he's in Lubavitch, he's hearing real keys in his machshava in real time, and Dubs him a five. We're not Yisroel Nevler. No one is not even close. I don't know what that means to go to real time. But the bottom line is we have to know that the Taka the Rebbe is here with us. He wants to hear from us, even though we're embarrassed sometimes to go in and to write. What do we write? And that's when you have to lift yourself up above that and recognize that L'Peil Mamish Anshe Ya'ir. That's who we are, and that's what the Rebbe wants us to do. In other words, it's a Veda of El is Taka Anila Deidi first. But there's no such a thing as Anila Deidi without first Videdi Li, right? That's why Videdi Li is also part of Rosh Tevis El. Even though Deidi Li is Rosh Hashanah, right? The Rebbe says in the Maimonides. Deidi Li is already Rosh Hashanah, but it's not. It's part of Rosh Tevis El. So the Rebbe says that even the Deidi Li is also part of El, because there can't be Anila Deidi without something first. What's that something? Amel Basada. That the king comes out in the field without his royal garments. It's not a full-fledged Yisraelis, but it's Amel Basada. But the Melech is Basada. So it's a full Yisraelis, not a full Yisraelis. That's a shame, Anashim, simple people like us, just the knowledge that the Rebbe is waiting for us, that's a full Yisraelis. Full, half, it's not, it does, I don't know, it makes that much of a difference. You have to go through the Gezam, the Farbrengen, and a little bit different. Not because we're going to start being Varp Salus and get busy with our Meshugais. Learn the Maimorim of the Rebbe and the Yula Deidi on El. I can see what the Rebbe says about Maraponim Seiches. What does he say about Mekabel is Kulam B'Seiv upon Yofis? How the Rebbe, how the Eibishter is, these are dargis within Amelach Basada, how he shows himself to us. That's what Elul is. And the emissaries, the Rebbe shows himself to us like that also. We just have to lift ourselves up and go into El with the Varmkeit, Chassidishkeit, with the Rebbe's El, know who we are and who we're not. It's also important. And then say, then come Rosh Hashanah, it'll be taka another Rosh Hashanah. If you can make it to the Elul, it's the best thing you can do, Mustame. Even if you can't, Yates and Ansia Elul cross is in a different way. You won't go to the Elul, you go by Machshav, you go however you want, like Yisroel Nevla. Figure it out. That you figure out. L'chaim, l'chaim. Erchman, this is supposed to go further. How's this work?
It's your call. You're the Farbrengen.
Okay.
You could finish here.
Whatever you want. I don't know.
Say good to Vach.
Long-
And I think, it's up to you. It's your call.
Okay.
I have to go. But
How you doing?
it's beautiful, and thank you for inspiring us. A lot of things that Mamish didn't think of. So,
I'll tell you, you want to talk about Elul. First thing we have to, I don't know, first we have to learn the Mevorchim of Elul. Something practical. I should open up Likutei Torah tomorrow morning or whenever you have time. I should go through the Maimer. A few Mevorchim and Likutei Torah, there's a beer, whatever. Go through the first Maimer Chodsh. That's a given. That's Aleph base. And then you have Gimel Dalet. Go through the Rebbe's Mevorchim and Elul. Try to learn them. Try to understand them. What's the Rebbe? Sichos, whatever. Rabbi Schapiro mentioned some of the sichos that are so beautiful as a Yishmak. But simply the Maimer Likutei Torah, that we should become familiar with that Maimer. We have to know that Maimer on our fingertips. We have to know it. We have to learn it every year. You understand what the Alter Rebbe is saying. You can't understand what the Alter Rebbe is saying without the Rebbe's biurim. Because even the moshel over there doesn't end. It's a half a moshel. It doesn't even say the nimshel. It does just ends it. It's almost like a shortcut. Like he stops like a short stop. You wonder what's going on there. Why doesn't the Alter Rebbe finish up? He left it for the Rabbi. He left it for the Rebbe to take it over. You know what I'm saying? It's like I'm saying that whole moshel was an unknown mizokt. It's your moshel Likutei Torah. Every month there's a lot of mishalim Likutei Torah that no one knows. No one. I mean that a moshel, another moshel. This is the way this was also for many generations. Of course, we have to get to know it. We should know what's going on. And apply it a little bit. And the same with Rosh Hashanah and Kippur. I'm familiarized a little bit with what the Rebbe said on these days. What the Rebbe, everyone does. What's a chiddush? No chiddush over here. L'chaim. See this. That's Pshat Gor Anders. When you learn the Rebbe, when he's introduced to the Rebbe's world, like Schapiro mentioned earlier that there are people that are mesmerized. The Rebbe is going on certain things. I think he said that. They can't believe that the Rebbe, they don't, everything the Rebbe touched got Anders. It was a different, it was a whole different, one thing after the other. You go through the years. Then Shabbos, still Shabbos. Still Shabbos. Shabbos is a generation until Mashiach comes. That's we have to push it. Not be. I said before that the Rebbe always told people to look beyond, to look ahead, don't look back. I heard this so many times from people. And it's so encouraging when you think about it. We're not shaykh to anything. of real faith. It's a different generation, right? You can't compare it to the Amolek Chassidim, even of the last generation, let alone 3 generations ago. Rebbe knew Yedei Tzadik Nefesh Behemte. He knows who his behem is, right? He knows us. Mentioned Reuven Dunen. You know what Reuven Dunen once said? That when the Rebbe Farbrengen on Shabbos, was once thinking about it. He said the Rebbe's Farbrengen on Shabbos downstairs so he gained an appreciation for how Neach felt in the Teva. Reuven Dunen's descriptions. Is one man, Neach, dealing with Teva. He did Tzadik Nefesh Behemte. He knew exactly who we were. He knew what we're shaykh to and what we're not shaykh to. On the one hand, we're not shaykh to much. On the other hand, we're shaykh to Shabbos. The God Andish, an andere Leben, which is so true. It's such a contradiction. On the one hand, it's two opposite things going on at the same time. We're lowly. We're not even Anshe Chel Mamish, Anshe Soda. Yeah, the Rebbe says that's a Shabbos dika generation. Ya Anshe Iri schleps us up to the highest levels. And that's how he sees us. On the other hand, the Rebbe does have a second chapter in that Maimer. He talks about over there, wash it simply, how to go and how to be an Elul, he says also Elul, yeah. That mushal is like a serious mushal. That what? More is disconnected, yeah. We lower ourselves to a point where we don't even realize how far and how off track we are. At the end of the day, the Alter Rebbe says what to do, yeah. Yeah, the whole thing over there. He gets at the end. He gets back to his skafia. That's what he says basically. We live this kind of, so on the one hand, we can't run away from simple things of the second chapter of Anila Deidi, which is Pel Mamish, what to do when you're in a matzav like this, when you're disconnected, you don't feel inspired, you don't feel anything. We need a real push. On the other hand, the Rebbe tells us with that, don't focus too much on that. It's a contradiction. Not a contradiction, it's two kavim running parallel. And that's it. The Rebbe told us, yeah, you can reconnect, but let me show you how to reconnect. If the marshal says that if you find that in the gashmis, if your foot is just cut off, if they imagine they would find in the refuahs a way to reconnect your leg, of course you would do that, right? You would feel again. And then you bang your foot into the thing, you would feel it again, right? The Rebbe said, Beruchna is such a way. So how do you do it? The Rebbe says our generation has to do it in a different way. A different way. What's the different way? I'm always pure iskafia, break yourself a little bit. I'm not saying that's not a thing to do. I'm then fairish, yeah, but even iskafia, even all these in Yonim. The Rebbe once said, I just learned in Namaina this week, that Kabbalah's ale is mitech tainim. So the Kabbalah's ale is the opposite of tainim. What's Kabbalah's ale? Kabbalah's ale is we don't have tainim. So the Rebbe says, no, Kabbalah's ale is also from tainim. The Rebbe took these inyonim that are, and he lifted them up. Kabbalah's ale mitech tainim. So that brought many places, but I think the Rebbe is the one that really explained that Nakuda, really emphasized that Nakuda. Even Kabbalah Sel, which is dry, which is, it's the beginning, it's the Nasser before the Nishma. The Rebbe said Kabbalah Sel is the union of Tainum. So you have to do iskafia, you have to do whatever the Alter Rebbe says over there. It's a different way to do it. It's Melech Basad Melech, you're part of the Melech's world. Don't worry about the midbar, you're not in the midbar, and we are Anshia here, that's where you belong, that's who you are. And just jump in, and that's it. That's how the Rebbe dealt with it. And it worked. It works for us. Al Kaponim. Chaim, everyone. It's 12 o'clock. Chaim's on. Shkeach Rabbi Erechman and Rabbi Beis Menachem for inviting me to Farbrengen a little bit. It's always good to speak things out. You become clear yourself. So thank you for being me'erer me and my good Tavachalum and we'll go from one Farbrengen to the next to Mirza Hashem. Chaim. If anyone wants to speak, hate. I'm not ending the Farbrengen, Chas v'sholom. Chaim.
Thank you, Rabbi Spalter.
Yeah. Yeah. The whole hymn of the just to finish off with the same what I started, that the Rebbe is the one that took the Rebbe to bring the Chayis and El, yeah. The Chay El brought a new Chayis into El. The Rebbe brought a new Chayis into that Chayis. Different El, ganz, even different than from a generation ago. Ask Nissen Nemen of what was El by him. From Chaim Tesla, what was El by him? El was. Ask a 10-year-old girl today, your kid that comes home from school, what's El? Another El, it's a different El. Anyway, L'chaim, a gute Nacht, a gute Woche. Anyone else want to speak? Gesundheit, go ahead. Rabbi Yisroel, sag etwas. Farbrengen.
Doing a good job.
That's serious.
Talking about the Rebbe, somebody shared with me a letter from the Rebbe to Nachum Shmarios Sonkin. I'm going to put it on the screen because it was an interesting about Stanzals when he was a Bocher. So I can find a way to get back to it. It was an interesting letter. Here. If people could see it. Talk about this. The Rebbe sends to Rabbi Shmai Sonkin. He says, I'm sending you a copy of the letter that I wrote, the Avrech Adin Stanzals. You see, his Begil Tez Zayin. He's like 16-year-old Bocher. And the Rebbe is taking care of him, making sure he's writing to Mashpim, take care of him, makar of him, do this, do that. 16-year-old Bocher. And the Rebbe was involved. So there are two things. I mean, whoever shared it with me, I said two things. Firstly, you see how the Rebbe took care of people, like even the young Bocher, and the influence, and then what you could expect from a 16-year-old Bocher. Take care of a Bocher, and this is what you get. Obviously, you have to have special koches, but you can't just throw off anybody, young Bocher or whatever it is, but everybody deserves attention and given the right care and the right things. Could go things. So certainly, we're a little bit older, so we could certainly have high expectations for ourselves. I thought that was a fascinating letter.
It is indeed.
Yeah, yeah.
I saw someone wrote, I saw this letter on Friday, I think, or on Thursday. Someone wrote that it's known that the Rebbe Rashab chose all the neshamas of Temchet Mimim, right?
Right.
Not safe kol aderes.
Yeah.
You see from this letter, the Rebbe chose a neshama. Pasha, the Rebbe had his neshama, who he chose and who plucked out and picked up and decided. And you see it in the Pasha letter, black on white over here, that the Rebbe is telling them to make sure that he is, is gekliben an neshama.
Yeah.
And guess what? The Rebbe is gekliben uns in neshama seichet. He plucked us out also from the Eitzer and neshamas. And he decided, and whatever. They're nicht. I don't know why they're nicht, but me, yeah. Uns, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, go figure, go understand that. What does that mean?
Whatever.
That's what we're told, right? That the Rebbe plucked, that the Rebbe Rashab plucked, chose every neshama. I don't know what that means. He went to the Eitzah neshamas and made a gang kleiden, whatever that means, yeah?
Yes.
The Rebbe definitely chose us.
Yeah.
One by one. It's not possible to be the Rebbe's. I remember in Tofshin Mem Hey, I'm not joking, this in Mem Hey or Mem Vov, it was then with the Parsha from the Sforim. This is mamish an unbelievable thing. So there was a Yidden, this was a Lubavitcher. The non-shul Lubavitcher Chassidim, you know, the Lubavitcher Mishpach, I'm not going to mention his name, who was wishy-washy, he was on the fence then. He was a Psazeh, he was Pesach, Hashteh Asipim. That with the two, with the Sforim then. And apparently, I can't remember the exact language, but it seemed like from what the Rebbe is saying that this person, at the Psazeh, he said something to the effect that, like if I have to leave, if this is what it is, I'm not, I'm gonna, if can't, he threatened the Psazeh, I'll leave, I'll leave Lubavitch, something like that. It sounded like. The Rebbe said by the Farbrengen, the Goli, he said, I think he said it's either shtus, whatever, but the Rebbe then said, want to leave, leave. It's less achrayis for me. Those are the words that came out of the Rebbe's mouth. I says, he's still a Yid. He's still a Yid. How could you say? But there is a certain achrayis that the Rebbe has for you and for me. An shishlemeinu.
Yeah.
And the Rebbe takes it serious. The Rebbe was so, he was so passionate, that Farbrengen, the way he said it. Could you imagine that? So if we are part of the Rebbe's world, the Rebbe's family, the Rebbe's chassidim, the Rebbe takes achrayis. And the Rebbe is here, continuing to take the achrayis. We have to push it, know what it is. The Rebbe has a certain affinity for Lubavitch chassidim. He's the Rebbe of all the 100%. But there's a certain achrayis that he takes for Lubavitch, anshe shlemeina, as we call it. And you can't walk away from that. It's a tremendous chus, but it's also. I once said, I'll say it over here also. I'm Mevorchim, why not? You know that the Rebbe, it says that the Vihester, Avinu, right? Avinu by the Brisbane Absorim, right? What happened over there? Eibishter tells him, Anechim Mogen noch schor chahar b'meid, right? I think it was over there. And Avinu comes back and tells the Eibishter, was habe ich von the alle in Yonu, what do I need this all? Aneche helech hariri. I don't have children. What do I need all this schor chahar b'meid? It doesn't do anything for me if I don't know when to leave it with, right? Everyone knows that at that time when Avraham Avinu was talking to the Eibishter by this, by the bris Bein Absorim, was already a man that had influence on Chveiz, half of the world. Everyone knew Avraham Avinu. He had Baal Tshuva, he had Geirim, Avraham Geiris, Hanoshim, Yasorim Geiris, Hanoshim. They had ashpah, tremendous. They had so much success in their shlichus and everything they were doing. Yet, in a moment of truth, he tells the Eibishter, it's megonish bad. It's like not worth. It's nothing. And they if I don't have kids, that's not worth for me anything. Anash, we talk about the Rebbe. The Anash is seine Kinder. We are his kids. I think that the Rebbetzin, there's a story the Rebbetzin told once, a kid in their house. The kid asked, where's the Rebbetzin? Where are your kids? He asked him innocently, right? He did. And I don't know who it was, but it was one of the little, the families that used to come visit the Rebbetzin. He asked, tells the Rebbetzin, where are your kids? Could you imagine? So the first time she didn't answer it. The second time he said, the Rebbetzin said, they're in 770. 770 is Pshat. Anash, who's in 770? Shluchim, Imim, everyone who's in 770. Lubavitch Chassidim are in 770. That's who he says are his kids. In the moment of truth, kids are what count as everything. You can be a successful person from today till tomorrow. If your kids, you don't have kids, or you have kids and they're not your kids, they're not behaving like your kids. In a moment of truth, it's terrible. It dwarfs everything else. You have to know this. The Rebbe shows every one of us how, I don't know, but it's a fact. Some fall into Lubavitch and some don't. Some come in and they dabble in Lubavitch and they walk away, and some don't dabble. They dabble and they stay. And we're born into it, so we're in. The Yonim Armel Maila, the Rebbe is picks up neshamas. Here, Adin Steinzels. The Rebbe writes letters, make sure he's taken care of. He sees a neshama, he wants him. He's choosing this neshama. He made him part of a nash. Like the block, I saw it. There's a nice interview with Dr. Block. You saw it? With what's his name? Yitzchak Block.
Mm-hmm.
A very nice article. Right over there, he says an interesting thing. They used to Farbrengen Motsei Shabbos of the Pegisha at 12 o'clock at night. He used to Farbrengen till who knows when in the morning. And they loved it. That was like the highlight, yeah? He tells me that they used to always bring a bottle of mashke for the Farbrengen. So I guess after a few Pegishas, some of the people that were regulars got to know him, and they decided they're going to play a prank on him. What did they do? They took his bottle of mashke before Shabbos or before the Farbrengen, Motsei Shabbos, and they filled it up with water. They poured out the mashke and they filled it up with water, and they closed it and gave it back to him. And then what? That big prank, but whatever. That's what they said. That's what they did. And he comes there for Friday night, Motsei Shabbos. He starts Farbrengen. He asks for l'chaim, and he sees it's water. He said, "You see, that's the difference in Nachsid Chassid Namim Snagid." He said they both look the same. They both put on film. They both eat matzah and peso. They both do all the mitzvahs. They looks the same. Same bottle. It looks all the same. He said, but this is flat, and this brings in chayis and warmth. It gives you excitement. Mash cases. It's not the same thing. It looks the same, but it's not the same. And he said something else over there. I don't remember why. Something that you said or I said just before. The Rebbe shows neshamas. It reminded me of something I read in that article. I can't remember right now what I had in mind, but he also, I think he brings out that Nakuda, the Rebbe Poshet, this is what it was. The Rebbe told Zalman Posner, I think he met the Rebbe the first time in Tafshin Yud. This says Dr. Black. And he was, as he came in, and at that, he was like a modern boy, and it was not. The Rebbe told Zalman Posner, tell him, Zalman Posner tells Yitzchak Black many years later, he says, I want to tell you something that Rebbe once told me about you that I never told you. The Rebbe told him in the early Yuds, the Rebbe told him, Evet, Sof kol sof vet averen umayner achos. The Rebbe chose Neshamas. The Rebbe elevated Neshamas. Took Neshamas and made them his. You and me are part of them. All of us, we're part of the Rebbe's Neshamas. That he saw, I want this one for my, that's my kid, this is me. He didn't take every year, it's an andere Sache, the Moshe Rabbeinu auf die ganze Welt, und dann ist seine Mensch, Anshe Moshe. Anash is Anshe Moshe. It's a different thing, it's a different relationship, it's a different achrayis, it's a different schus, it's a different world. For us, the Rebbe is accessible in a way that only we can appreciate. We know it. We know it. We know it in our kishkas. We know it. We're lazy. We just don't want to step up to the plate. Ariz came from the midbar to go into the soda, the kabel ponovus basada. All we need to do is to step out of the midbar, go into the soda. That's not easy, huh? We should remember who we are. No matter what we are, we have to remember who we are. And a Ben Melech we are. He's on the Bona, B'nai, the Rebbe's kids. The Rebbe's kids. That alone lifts us up. That's it. You're a kid. What more do you need? In the moment of truth, Rabbi tells the Eibishter, all the success is garnished. All our kids. We have to be the Rebbe. A kid is a kid. All kids are kids. Those that give nachas and those that don't chas v'shalom. We have to keep the Rebbe up at night, crying. Give the Rebbe a little nachas. L'chaim, l'chaim. The floor is yours, Rabbi Frankfurter.
That's it. We're good.
Very good.
Gute
Nacht, Allemann. A gute Woche. All the best.